Our facilitator is John McDonald. Mr. McDonald, would you call the roll, please?
Chair Baker,
Present.
Commissioner Gohill,
Here.
Commissioner Hale,
Present.
Commissioner Hammond,
Here.
Commissioner Jackson,
Almost here. Here.
Commissioner Martinez,
Present.
Commissioner Robigo,
Present.
Commissioner Shea,
Present.
Commissioner Martinez is the one with the tie. Would you go through the agenda, please?
Item number 1 is citizen communication. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from December 4th, 2007. Item number 3 is rezoning case number C814-06-0233, Wildflower Commons Plan Unit Development, located at the blocks 4700 through 5300 of State Highway 45. The request is from SF2 GO to PUD. This item is offered for postponement to February 19th. Item number 4, rezoning case C14-2007-0149, Citric House and Home Limited Liability Corporation, located at 3401 West Slaughter Lane. The request is from LOCO to LR. This item has been postponed to February the 5th. Item number 5, rezoning C814-96-003.06, Pioneer Crossing PUD Amendment number 6, located at West Breaker Lane at Musket Valley Trail. The request is to amend the Pioneer Crossing PUD. This item is being postponed to February 5th. Item number 6, rezoning, case number C14-2007-0190, Breaker Lane Commercial, located at 1015 East Breaker Lane. The request is LOLR to GRCO. The recommendation, this item is recommended for GRCO and offered for consent. Item number 7 is a restrictive covenant termination. Case number C14R-86-057 RCT 1015 East Breaker Lane, located at 105 East Breaker Lane. This item is offered for consent. Item number 8, rezoning, case number C14-2007-0228 11722 Bell Avenue, located at 11722 Bell Avenue. The request is from SF2 to SF3. It's recommended and offered for consent. Item number 9, restrictive covenant amendment. Case number C14-95-0183, RCA2, Vina Plaza Restrictive Covenant. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Item number 10, rezoning.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry?
Let's go back to 9. I show postponement request by staff for 12/18.
They've actually changed the postponement request.
Okay.
Oh, here. Madam Chair, Sherry Serwatis, Neighborhood Planning and Zoning. That was the postponement to this date. It was somehow left on their agenda. This case is ready to be heard tonight, and it is for an amendment to tracks 4 and 6 of that restrictive covenant, and the staff is recommending it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But you shouldn't confuse us like that,
I'm sorry.
especially the chair. Okay, I'm sorry.
Item number 10, rezoning, case number C14-2007-0211 Clearwater, located at 501 through 5725 Deal Trail. The request is GO-MUCO to MF4. It's recommended MF4CO, offered for consent with conditions to be read into the record.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, Sherry Serwatis, Neighborhood Planning and Zoning again. On case C-14, 2007-0211, Clearwater, the neighborhood and the agents for and the applicant for the case did meet yesterday. They had a meeting, and they came up with some conditions that they agreed upon for this case, and I shall read those into the record. The first would be a maximum of 288 units will be built at Clearwater, and that can be in a conditional overlay. The second is a 25-foot vegetative buffer will be provided along the property line adjacent to the single-family homes. That was the staff's recommendation, and that can be in a conditional overlay.
Is that an ordinance requirement?
There is an ordinance requirement for a 25-foot setback,
Okay.
but this would be a vegetative buffer within that setback.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 3 is the neighborhood has requested that the City of Austin allow a retaining wall to be placed within the 25-foot vegetative buffer in order to provide additional landscaping in areas where the grades drop along Covington Trail, and the privacy fence and landscaping along the property line do not provide, because the landscaping along the property line does not provide enough screening. So what this retaining wall would be something that would be constructed by the applicant, and that would be something that would have to be in the private restrictive covenant. However, to allow that retaining wall within that 25-foot vegetative buffer would be in the public covenant. That would be something you all would approve. Item number 4 is 12-foot trees to be planted inside the vegetative buffer along the Clearwater property line next to the fence to provide dense screening. And it talks about the actual tree species and planting locations to be coordinated between the landscape architect, landscaper, developer, and the neighborhood committee. Obviously, that would be something that would have to be done in a private restrictive covenant. You can require the trees, and if they want to work out the type in a private covenant later. And item number 5 is a 7-foot board-on-board privacy fence to be installed along the Clearwater property line next to the existing 6-foot single-family fence. And that would be something that could be in a conditional overlay that you all could approve. Item number 6 is to relocate the trash compactor, maintenance building, and car care center away from the single-family development to the interior of the Clearwater site. That would be something that would have to be a private agreement, and Ms. Glasgow has said that this is something that they are handling at the site plan, that they've already relocated those items. Item number 7 is add additional tree planting in an area where the trash compactor, maintenance building, and car care center were previously located. Actual tree species and planting locations to be coordinated again, and no building coverage will be built in this area. Those would be something that would have to be in the private agreement and handled in the site plan as well, that's already in-house. Item number 8 is all exterior lighting will be shielded and hooded away from the single-family neighborhoods as per the city code. That's in our conditional, our compatibility requirements already. So that could be additionally put in a conditional overlay, but it's already required according to compatibility standards. And then item number 9 is construction hours of operation will be as follows, and it has hours listed Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Sundays, no construction. Obviously, that would have to be in a private covenant. So I will give this information to the chair, and these are items that staff agrees as well. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 11, rezoning, case number C14-2007-0226, Stonelay zoning, located at 7206 Stonelay Place. The request is from SF2 to SF3. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Item number 12, rezoning, case number C14-2007-0227, Rio Vista, located at the southeast corner of South Quinlan Park Road and Selma Hughes Park Road. The request is from DR to SF2. This item is, and the recommendation is SF2CO. This item is offered for consent. Item number 13, rezoning, case number C814-06-0202, Peer Partners, located at 1703 River Hills Road. The request is from CS1 and LA to PUD. This item is not recommended in the alternate recommendation of CRCO. This item will be a discussion item. Item number 14, restrictive covenant termination, case number C14-86-301 RCT, Springfield, located at East William Cannon Drive, McKinney Falls Parkway, and Colton Bluff Springs Road. The request is to terminate the restrictive covenant as it applies to this property. The restrictive covenant limits floor to area ratios on non-residentially zoned tracts, limits density of multi-zone tracts, requires right-of-way dedication on Scenic Loop Drive, renamed as McKinney Falls Parkway, and specifies conditions of site plans and outlines cost participation in certain roadway improvements. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Oh, I'm sorry, it's recommended with conditions and offered for consent. Item number 15, restrictive covenant termination, case number C14-03-0147 RCT, 8700 block of South First Street, located at the 8700 block of South First Street. The request is to terminate the restrictive covenant as it applies to the property. It's recommended and offered for consent. Item number 16 is site plan and environmental variance only, case number SP-07-0139D, Pearson Business Center. It's recommended by the Environmental Board and staff and offer of consent. Item number 17, site plan environmental variance only, case number SP-2007-0461D, Whitestone Church. It's located at 4101 North FM 620 Road. The request is for a variance from LDC Section 25-8-65A to omit the roadway deduction in calculation of allowable impervious cover. This item is not recommended and offered for discussion. Item number 18 is site plan environmental variance only, case number SP-06-0665D, Embarcadero. It's located at River Hills Road. The request is actually two variances: to allow construction on slopes greater than 25% and to reduce the wastewater treatment by land application requirement of 7,000 square feet per living unit equivalent to 5,000 square feet per living unit equivalent. This is recommended with conditions, and it is going to be a discussion item. Item number 19, a preliminary plan, case number C8-2007-0135, Knollwood on the Colorado River, located at 7051 and a half Shelton Road. The request is for the approval of the Knollwood on the Colorado River subdivision composed of 267 lots on 91.63 acres for single family. This item is being postponed by the neighborhood, but it will be a discussion item, discussion postponement. Item number 20, final with preliminary, case number C8J-06-0141.1A, Ridgeview Phase 1, located at Southview Road. The request is for the approval of the Ridgeview Phase 1 subdivision composed of 128 lots on 61.146 acres. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Item number 21, final plat, case number C8J-99-0110.03.8A, Riverdance Phase 7B at Steiner Ranch, located at North Quinlan Park Road. The request for the approval of the Riverdance Phase 7B at Steiner Ranch plat composed of 116 lots for single-family use on 40.86 acres. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Item number 22 is a plat vacation, case number C8-01-0076.1A, VAC, Scenic Point Phase 4, located at 7200 Johnny Morris Road. The request is for the approval of the total vacation of Scenic Point Phase 4, which is 21 lots on 4.71 acres, recorded in 2002. This item is recommended and offered for consent. Item number 23 is preliminary plan, case number C8J-06-0191, Wandering Creek, located at Elroy Road and McAngus Road. That request is for approval of the Wandering Creek preliminary plan, which is comprised of 1,795 lots on 647.79 acres. This item is being pulled, no action required. The next is discussion and action on statutory disapprovals. First one, item number 24, re-subdivision, case number C8J-2007-0133.0A, Northridge Acres number 2, re-subdivision of Lot 1, located at 14000 Summit Drive. The request is for the approval of Northridge Acres number 2, re-subdivision of Lot 1, composed of 3 lots on 3.028 acres. Offer for disapproval. Item number 25, final with preliminary. Case number C8-04-0154.3A.SH. Colton Bluff subdivision, Phase 1, located at Colton Bluff Springs Road and McKinney Falls. The request is for the approval of the Colton Bluff subdivision, Phase 1, final plat, composed of 89 lots on 14.5 acres. That's items offered for disapproval. Item number 26, revised preliminary plan, case number C8-04-0033.02.SH. Zachary Scott subdivision, preliminary plan revision number 2, located at Bradshaw Road. The request is for the approval of the revision number 2 for the Zachary Scott preliminary plan, composed of 953 lots on 166 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 27, preliminary plan, case number C8J-2007-0135, Stony Ridge Phase C, located at Ross Road. The request is for the approval of the Stony Ridge Phase C preliminary plan, composed of 150 lots on 82.21 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 28, final plat, case number C8J-2007-0135.1A, Stony Ridge Phase C. For the request for the approval of the Stony Ridge Phase C final plat, composed of 150 lots on 28.21 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 29, final plat, case number C8J-2007-0134.0A, Buttress Farms, located at FM 812 Road. The request is for the approval of Buttress Farms, composed of 8 lots on 61.799 acres. This item's offered for disapproval. Item number 30, final plat, case number C8J-05-0231.10A, Havana Phase 1, Section 6, located at State Highway 45. The request is for the approval of Havana 1, Phase 1, Section 6, composed of 39 lots on 26.2640 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 31, final plat, case number C8J-2007-0131.0A, Hudson Bend Colony Number 1, amended plats of lots 5 and 6, Block 5, located at 16010 Webb Lane. The request is for the approval of the Hudson Bend Colony Number 1 amended plat of lots 5 and 6, Block 5, composed of 2 lots on 1.55 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 32, final plat, Marguerite Wolf subdivision, located at South Lakeline Boulevard. The request is for the approval of the Marguerite Wolf subdivision, composed of 2 lots on 4.129 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 33, re-subdivision, case number C8J-2007-0132.0A, Desal Point re-subdivision of Lot 1 and Media Square subdivision Lot 1, located at 2220.5 Greg Lane. A request for the approval of Desal Point re-subdivision of Lot 1 and Media Square subdivision Lot 1, which is comprised of 6 lots on 11.297 acres. This item's offered for disapproval. Item number 34, amended plat, case number C8-2007-0212.0A, Hughes Park Lane subdivision number 1, the amended plat of lots 88, 90, and 91, located at 12890 Park Drive. The request is for the approval of the Hughes Park Lane subdivision number 1, amended plat of lots 88, 90, and 91, comprised of 4 lots on 2.85 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 35, final plat, case number C8-85-070.11.5A, Tudor Time, Boulder Lane, Lot 1, Block A. A request for the approval of the Tudor Time, Boulder Lane, Lot 1, Block A, subdivision, which is comprised of 1 lot on 3.134 acres. This item's offered for disapproval. Item number 36, final plat, case number C8J-85-110.3A, the Overlook Estates Phase 2, located at 10410 Rawhide Trail. The request is for the approval of the Overlook Estates Phase 2 subdivision comprised of 40 lots on 0.95 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 37, final without preliminary, case number C8-2007-0224.0A, Spring Lake subdivision located at Spring Lake Drive. The request is for the approval of the Spring Lake subdivision comprised of 1 lot on 1.35 acres. This item is offered for disapproval. Item number 38, amended plat, case number C8-2007-0225.0A, West Hill Estates, Section 2, amended plat, located at Yopon Drive. The request is for the approval of the West Hill Estates, Section 2, amended plat composed of 36 lots on 4.233 acres. This item is recommended for disapproval. Item number 39, preliminary plan, case number C8J-04-0172.01 Amara Drive preliminary plan, located at Carranzo Drive. The request is for the approval of the Amara Drive preliminary plan comprised of 132 lots on 35.79 acres, and this item is offered for disapproval. And the last is other business items from the commission.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't know the appropriate time to do it, but it probably makes sense for us to add an item for discussion maybe at our next meeting to modify our bylaws, given we're going to have 2 vacancies that I don't see the council having any urgency to replace those, and we ought to revisit our quorum requirements.
I think our quorum requirements have changed because of the changes the council made for boards and commissions. And our total board, it's my understanding, through attrition, will be no greater than 7 people.
But I don't think we've changed those. We have to go change those
Okay.
rules.
Uh,
So we probably
You-
need an item on our
We'll
agenda.
put that up on the next agenda. I'm going back through the agenda and group together the items. First, the consent items. We will have a motion and a vote. Then we will discuss, we'll do postponed items with a motion and a vote. Then we will do discussion postponement. Our first consent item is the approval of our minutes for December the 4th. Second one, item 6, and if Mr. Crank is here, I would like to see if he can concur with this. They have a request from LOLR to GRCO. They have a number of uses they have omitted. You have deleted counseling services. Counseling services is even permitted in LO, and I would really hate to see that deleted. Could you add it back in as a permitted use? Would you be willing to?
Madam Chair, the agent agrees that he would be willing to add that as a permitted use.
As a permitted use?
Yes.
Okay, so item 6, Breaker Lane Commercial from LOLR to GRCO with conditions. Item 7, 1015 East Breaker Lane. I don't see the front. A restrictive covenant termination. It's recommended as a consent item. Item 8, 11722 Bell Avenue from SF2 to SF3, recommended as consent. And I'm having a hard time seeing this. Packet was too big today. Item 10, Clearwater from GOMUCO to MF4.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I think item number 9, the restrictive covenant amendment's a consent item.
yes. Yeah, I read it. It is consent, didn't it?
I think you didn't read it in.
Okay. Vena Plaza Restrictive Covenant Amendment Number 2 to amend a restrictive covenant to change conditions in a TIA that applied to tracks 4, 5, and 6, recommended as consent. Thank you.
Madam Chair, it was the tracks 4 and 6, they changed it, the backup. Unfortunately, it had track 5, but that's not included.
Thank you. Tracks 4 and 6. Can I read item 10 without? Item 10, Clearwater from GOMUCO to MF4. It's recommended as consent item with all the conditions set out by the case manager, some overlays, some restrictive covenants, etc.
Madam Chairman,
I beg your pardon?
some of this came to ask a question about that item.
We're going to pull it then, and it'll stay in order, okay? Item 11, Stoneleigh zoning requests from SF2 to SF3. It's presented to us as a consent item. Item 12, Rio Vista from DR to SF2, recommended SF2 CO, presented to us as consent. Item 14, Springfield Restrictive Covenant Amendment to amend the restrictive covenant. It's recommended to us as consent with conditions. Item 15, 8700 block of South First, to terminate a restrictive covenant as it applies to the property, recommended to us as consent. Discussion and action on site plans. Item 16, Pearson Business Center, recommended approval by the Environmental Board. Our recommendation will be consent with the conditions set out by the Environmental Board. Item 20, Ridgeview Phase 1. This is final with preliminary, recommended to us as consent. Item 21, Riverdance Phase 7B at Steiner Ranch, recommended to us as consent. Platte Vacation Scenic Point Phase 4, recommended to us as consent. Statutory disapprovals, item 24.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, staff had just told me that citizens had showed up to speak on item number 11, which was originally a consent item.
Item 11,
Uh-huh. The rezoning case for Stoneleigh zoning.
thank you. Now I'm going to statutory. Got to find them again. Statutory disapprovals, item 24, re-subdivision, Northridge Acres, number 2, re-subdivision, lot 2. Consent disapproval, item 26, final with preliminary, Colton Bluff subdivision, phase 1. Consent disapproval, 26, revised preliminary, Zachary Scott subdivision, primary plan revision 2, consent disapproval. Item 27, Stony Ridge Phase C, preliminary plan, consent disapproval. Item 28, final plat, Stony Ridge Phase C, consent disapproval. Item 28, final plat, Buttress Farms, consent disapproval. Item 30, final plat, Havana Phase 1, Section 6, consent disapproval. Item 31, final plat, Hudson Bend Colony, number 1, amended plat of lots 5 and 6, block 5, consent disapproval. Final plat, Marguerite Wolf subdivision, consent disapproval. Item 33, Dessau Point re-subdivision of Lot 1 and Median Square subdivision Lot 1, consent disapproval. Amended plat, Hughes Park Lane subdivision number 1, amended plat of lots 89, 90, and 91, consent disapproval. Item 35, final plat, Tudor Time Boulder Lane Lot 1, Block A, consent disapproval. Item 36, final plat, the Overlook Estates Phase 2, consent disapproval. Item 37, Spring Lake subdivision, consent disapproval. Item 38, West Hill Estates, Section 1, amended plat, consent disapproval. Item 39, Amara Drive preliminary plan, consent disapproval. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, we signed up to speak on item 14. Is that not possible?
It is possible.
Could we, on that motion, please delete item 14? On the
Number
consent?
14, right?
Item 14. So could we delete that from the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? Any problem? Our postponed items, first one is item 3, Wildflower Commons Plan Unit Development. Postponement request by staff to 2/19. Item 4, Citric House and Home LLC. Postponement request to 2/5 by staff. Item 5, Pioneer Crossing PUD Amendment Number 6. Postponement request to 2/5 by staff. Those are the consent postponed items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of the consent postponed items, please say aye.
Aye.
We had a discussion postponement.
Do the pulled one.
Pardon?
Well, we don't have to do anything for 23 that was pulled.
Mm-mm. Well, I thought we had a discussion postponement. Maybe we didn't.
We did have a discussion.
19,
postponed.
discussion postponement.
Pardon?
19 is discussion postponement.
Discussion postponement on Knollwood on the Colorado River subdivision. We will hear from the person or the primary speaker requesting the postponement. We will hear from the primary speaker in opposition to the postponement, but we're not going to discuss the merits of the case. We're going to discuss the postponement. So who's the primary speaker wanting to postpone the case, please?
I don't know how you do this. Just go over here. I'm not sure what you mean.
Your name?
My name is Carol Cardozo. I own property that the development will surround. It'll be on 3 sides of my property. I got information about, I got a notice that the development was being looked into, but I didn't realize how far along it was until I saw them putting up a lot of red tags and flags and stuff, at which point I called the city, and Don Perryman sent me a set of the plans. I was very impressed by the detail and how many houses there were. I didn't realize it'd be that elaborate. So I still didn't realize how imminent it was until I got the notice for this hearing about a week and a half later. And at that point, I realized I had to do something, so I've been trying to find out what to do and calling around trying to locate people who could give me advice. And the best advice I got was to request a postponement because it was Christmas and nobody had time to be doing a lot of research and help me. I contacted lawyers and environmental associations, and people were just busy, and I was busy. And I've devoted the last week and a half when I'm supposed to be packing to leave to trying to find out what to do. So I decided to request a postponement because I just can't do it in the time I had. I'm concerned about my well. I'm concerned about the fact that the road to my house will be cut off and I have to go around a whole other way. I'm concerned about the fact that the exit road from this development is in the 100-year floodplain, so if there is a big flood, you can't get out. And speaking as a former firefighter / EMT, that's nothing to sneer at. I'm very concerned about an incredible change in the neighborhood from the rural country that I bought just 2 years ago, thinking that if they did anything, at least it would be in keeping with that, to the fact that there's going to be a house every 7,000 square feet. And this is a lot to deal with after I just bought this place thinking I'd found heaven. So I'm requesting some time to try to find out what my options are.
Have you not met with the applicant or the applicant's representative?
He called me at 4:30 this afternoon when I was trying to get ready to get over here, and I said I couldn't talk then. I got here just in time to be here, and so I'm talking to you.
Okay, thank you. Can we hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative, please?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name's Ken Blaker. I represent the owners. I am an owner out there. We received this request for postponement this afternoon. It's the first we've ever heard of a postponement. We have touched base with Mr. Don Perryman periodically to see if there have been any concerns raised from adjacent property owners, and that hasn't happened. As you know, this area is not in a neighborhood zoned planning area. We have been out there. The application has been in-house. Notice was sent out beforehand. I did meet with Ms. Cardoza just before this meeting, and we didn't really have a whole lot of time to discuss things, but we did talk about being able to get together, and we're willing to work with her. But our application, as it went through the system, we are currently zoned SF2 out there, and that's the density that we have on this project, and we comply with all ordinance requirements, and we respectfully request that the application be moved forward.
Your
Mr.
name?
Blaker, go ahead.
Your name again, sir?
Yes, ma'am?
What is your name again?
It's Ken Blaker.
Mr. Blaker, did you at any time meet with Ms. Cardoza prior to today?
Did not know that there was an issue that Ms. Cardoza has on the property.
Did you meet with any of the neighbors abutting your property?
Did not.
Can we get staff to throw up the sheet A19-4 for me, please?
It's pretty rural out there, isn't it?
It is.
There's no
I just want to make
development.
sure I understand what tract Ms. Cardoza owns, and maybe a question or two that I think I see it, but I'm not sure.
Know who it is on here?
Ms. Cardoza owns, there are actually two tracts. She owns one outright, and then there's a second one that she, I believe, is a part owner in.
So they're the
that
long
is in the middle, and they're
rectangular
long tracts.
tracts.
They're 5-acre parcels, and we do surround them on 3 sides. That's correct.
Is Ms. Cardoza still here?
Yes, she is.
Maybe she can
And-
confirm.
Okay, there's the map. Can you show us on the map, please? Someone?
Zoom in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, what is her current access? Okay, commissioners?
I'd like to know how much time Ms. Cardoza might need to review.
Ms.
How does
Cardoza?
she currently, how do you currently, you might go to the map and show us how you currently access your property, if you don't mind, Ms. Cardoza.
Currently, I come in off of 183 here, and I drive down Smith Road, and I drive, Smith Road jogs, and then I come out here and I'm at my property. And with the new system, I'll come in here and I'll go over here on Shelton, and I'll come in right here. I'll drive down here, over here, and around here. So, well, okay, he says that's not correct. I want to be right.
Yeah, actually, the new way to come in will be right up 183, right in here. It's a more direct route coming into the community to her property.
I have a question. Is this off of 183, or are you still coming in at Smith and Howard and then going down?
No, it'll be coming
Need the
in right
mic.
off.
We didn't hear a
Microphone.
thing she said.
I said, normally, at this point, you come in off of Smith Road right here, and you would go straight. There's another road to this direction called Howard, and there's no other way to get onto 183 from there. But I'm asking if, at this point, there'll be a new way to get on 183 over here, or if you'll come into the development off of Howard.
As a temporary measure, what's going to happen is we'll connect into Howard, but as you may or may not be aware of, 183 has been approved for toll road, and the plans for that are basically 100% complete. And they're going to make the main lanes tolled, and then they're going to have 3 new frontage roads, and we'll have direct access into the new frontage roads.
Do you have any idea when that will be in place? So you figure that we'll have those roads out there within the next 2 or 3 years?
When we've checked on that, and from a timing issue, it could be anywhere from 2009 to 2011 in place.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure on the postponement?
I have a quick question for
Sure.
Ms. Cardoza. Could you tell us what the use of these properties are currently?
Currently, I have a caretaker out there. I was trying to renovate one of the houses. Vandals came and stripped all the copper. I didn't have the money to make that up, so I'm trying to get the money to where I can fix up one of the houses. It looks like I'll be able to do that in the next year.
But nobody is really residing out there. You've got a caretaker.
I have a caretaker out there.
Okay.
But I want to be the person residing out there. I spend about 20 or 30 hours a week out there right now. I do photography, and I've been planting native grasses and wildflowers, trying to turn it back toward a more natural state. And I've put in probably about $1,000 worth of plantings so far. And I've got hours and hours of photographs that I've taken. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Commissioners, on the postponement.
I'd like to ask Ms. Cardoza a question.
Okay.
In this brief discussion with Mr. Blaker, were you able to resolve anything that you had in mind?
No.
Okay.
I feel that there was a pathway opened, but I'd be unwilling to feel confident that things will be resolved to the point where, I would like to be able to come back to you guys if we haven't resolved them. Or if I don't even know what all the issues are yet. Like I say, I didn't really have time to figure out what my resources are or what's going on. So I feel kind of, I just don't know. This is out of my element.
And did you not receive notice in the mail about this?
About, I guess, a month ago or maybe 2 months ago, I received notice that they were going to, in August, whenever, I received notice that there was going to be a plan prepared and there would be a meeting. And at that point, I called the city and I said, what is this and what should I do? And they said, well, nothing's really been set up yet. So what you should do is wait, and when it goes to a hearing, we'll send you a notice. So I waited. And apparently that wasn't the best move. I should have been researching then, but all I was told was that at this point we don't have anything on paper, so we can't tell you anything, so you need to wait. So I did. I'm a single mom. I work for myself. I try to keep up with things, but it's not that easy.
Ms. Cardoza, you need to realize that if this preliminary plan meets ordinance requirements, and it is preliminary, we have no discretion. But Commissioners, if you'd like to postpone, the next meeting would be January 8th. If you'd like to approve it.
I guess my question is, considering the concerns that Ms. Cardoza had in terms of getting information over the holidays, I don't know if January 8th would solve that. So I guess my question is, what is the most appropriate timing? Because I would possibly propose
Then
the
next
meeting after that.
Next meeting would be the 22nd.
Yeah.
Well, on the counterpoint, I'd like to at least hear from the developer's representative regarding the postponement that we made, just briefly, what the impact it would have on.
The impact that it will have on us is that we have made certain guarantees as we've moved through with the bank and the lending institution in terms of approvals. I own this property. We committed that we'd have certain things done as we've moved through. As Ms. Baker has pointed out, that it does meet ordinance requirements. As I've talked to Ms. Cardoza tonight, we are willing to sit down and visit with her and talk with her about issues to see what we can do to allay those concerns. But to the extent about the density that's out there, the property is currently zoned SF2, and we are actually under what the density permits for SF2 zoning. And we do comply with everything else, and the bulk of the plan won't change. But there are things that we can talk about in terms of buffers or something adjacent to our property that we're willing to work out on. And I'd be more than happy to continue doing that through the process. This is the first step in the process, but I'd really like to have approval tonight. And I know it puts you in a tough position.
Actually, I don't think we're in a tough position because I think we usually grant the neighborhood postponement on first request.
I would agree with that in terms of neighborhood postponement, but there was no neighborhood in terms of signed out here. There wasn't anything in that direction. We did contact Mr. Perryman. We did try to keep in touch with what was going on if there were people that had opposition out there, and that just wasn't referenced.
Is Ms. Cardoza a neighbor?
She is
Then she,
a resident.
that,
right.
then she would be the
Okay.
neighborhood.
Your definition, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Cardoza, excuse me, Mr. Blaker, are there other people here with you tonight from your neighborhood?
Well, yes, the neighborhood by me is owned by myself, my sister, and her sister-in-law. My sister and her sister-in-law, my sister's in Brooklyn, and her sister-in-law is in Alaska. So right now I represent them. I've brought the paperwork for their objection. There is Ori Sofer is here, and one other person.
I think we've pretty well discussed
So
the situation. Commission,
they live nearby,
Thank
on
you.
the other end of the.
I would like to suggest that it be postponed to the first meeting in January, and in that interim, that's a couple of weeks away, that Mr. Blaker secure the ownership, all the notified owners on the printout from staff, contact them, and see if he can arrange a meeting with them. If someone could make that motion?
Excuse me for one moment.
I move to grant postponement for the first meeting in January for the zoning commission.
I'll be out of town until the 1st. Just,
Well, you'll be back before the 8th.
yeah.
Okay.
I will put back in what I said previously. I believe January 22nd. I do not feel January 8th is enough time.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion for January 22nd. And Mr. Blaker, please get that ownership list and contact everyone, please. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I said no,
He said no.
but it still passed.
Yeah.
Our first discussion item is item 11, zoning from SF2 to SF3. Someone in the audience wanted to talk about this.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Actually, our first item for discussion tonight is item number 10. We pulled Clearwater because some members of the neighborhood were here to ask a question.
So Clearwater is also pulled. Are they still here?
Yeah, yes. And because I gave you a presentation last time, the commission postponed this. I did not know if you just wanted to entertain their questions.
Okay, that's fine. Let him come forward then, please. On item 10, Clearwater.
Good evening. My name is Len Slater. I'm a resident of Avery Island, and some other residents of Avery Island are here tonight also. At your last meeting, you suggested that the builder meet with us, and Legacy Partners has met with us. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of solution. But one problem that dominated the Avery Island consideration at the beginning still dominates it. Let me use the overhead here for a second. Yeah, that's good. There are 10 to 11 houses along Avery Island that will be bordered by three-story townhomes. To us, that seems like an incompatible combination of having one-story homes next to three-story apartments. And the 3-story apartments will look something like this. So we talked to the builder about the possibility of making the 2-story, or making the 3-story apartments 2-story. The builder said 2 things, and I'm here, I guess, to check with one. He said, one, that they could not make the project pay as it ought to unless they had those 3 townhomes. And 2, that what they were proposing was within the what they're permitted to do by the zoning system. I understand the requirement for return on investment. I'm a retired college administrator with an MBA, but I also understand that there are often more than one right way. And I guess my question, and the Avery Island question, is if this zoning does not allow 3 stories next to 1-story homes, that the builder be given an opportunity to find another option. And I guess if the zoning does permit that, our request is meaningless. Or maybe it's the type of thing where it's approved if no one disagrees, and we disagree with the 3 stories next to our 1-story homes. As a closing comment, the legacy builders people have been wonderful to deal with in every situation except that one, which seems to us to be the major problem.
Commissioners, did you have any questions for Mr. Slater?
I have
Sir?
a question.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I have a question for staff, and it might help clarify some issues, because it seems like having a 3-story building at the point where it sits behind these single-family homes, I mean, we have compatibility issues to comply with. So do these structures comply with compatibility setbacks?
I have not seen the site plan because we don't review the site plan at zoning. I can tell you that, compatibility requires that a structure no taller than 2 stories be built within 50 feet of the single-family property line and 3 stories within 100 feet of the single-family property line. So, and that's
So 3
compatibility.
3 stories at 100 feet, and considering the current zoning, that's what it would be at about 100 feet before they can go to
That's right,
3-story.
before it could go up to 3 stories.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Alice?
Yes, sir. So if I'm looking at the site plan right, the concern is are the 3 buildings, I don't have a map that shows what the cul-de-sac is, but if you're looking at the site plan they passed out here to us, it'd be the 3-story buildings, 3-story buildings adjacent to the cul-de-sac. I guess I'd like to have the neighborhood representative answer that question for me. First, to make sure that's your concern. Okay, the site plan that we just got, and I'm not sure whether the applicant passed that out or whether who passed it out, but we have a site plan.
Right.
And you've seen this, correct?
Right, and it's those 3 3-story
Those
buildings.
3-story buildings are your
Right
primary concern?
beside our 10 or 11 homes on Avery Island.
Okay.
That are our concern.
Okay.
The cul-de-sac is simply where Avery Island ends and goes back the other way.
Thank you.
Okay?
I need it. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Mr. Slater, you heard the recommendation by staff, and apparently this has gone through the neighborhood. Were you a party to those conditions?
I was part of the process, and our group raised an issue early on about the 3-story versus against the 1-story homes. And many other problems were solved by the builders. That one wasn't, and they said they couldn't. And my point here tonight is I'm not sure that what they're proposing is legally adequate, having the 3-story buildings right next to the 1-story homes. It may be that other things are required, but I don't know what they would be.
Yes, sir.
And you know, I'm getting into the applicant's business here, but I've done that before. If the units adjacent to these 3 units that we were talking about are made 2-story.
If they were 2-story, we'd have no problem.
Well, wait, you hadn't let me finish here, because you may have a problem with what I'm going to suggest next.
Okay.
And that what they, I think, have identified as maybe buildings 12 and 14, which are right behind what I think is building 3.
Mm-hmm.
If those 2 buildings were allowed to be 4-story, would your neighborhood be okay with that?
Yeah, if what is shown here is 14, if those are 4 stories so that they could still have the same number of rental units, we'd have no problem with that. It's the things that are right by our homes that we have the problem with.
Okay. Then you've answered my question.
Okay.
Now I've got a question for the applicant, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If that would allow you to keep your unit count whole, would that be acceptable to the applicant?
We've looked at that option. We've had a total of 5 meetings since you asked us to meet last. Alice Glasgow, representing Legacy Partners Residential Development. We've had a total of 5 meetings. We've had individual meetings with individual owners. There are several members. We've addressed everybody's concerns about the entire perimeter of the property. And Mr. Slater is he's on Avery Island Cove, and this project, the site plan you see is the site plan that was already in-house, that was submitted in August. So the city staff has been reviewing the site plan. It's in compliant with the compatibility standards. All the buildings follow the compatibility setback, the heights that are required. So the buildings that are closest to Avery Island Cove are townhomes. These townhomes they're stair steps, where you see the green coated, which is 2-story, meets the compatibility setbacks, and the 3-story setback is within what is allowed by code, so they're within 56 to 70 to 67 feet away from the single-family homes, and that's in keeping with the compatibility setback. As you can see, the detention pond takes up a large a large area of the site, and one of the things the neighborhood asked us is to relocate a car wash and maintenance facilities that were closer to the detention pond, and we've agreed we eliminated the car wash, just totally gone. We're not going to have it on site at all because we could not find a suitable location on the site. So we've addressed just about every concern. We had a meeting last night, about 24 residents attended, and everybody's concerns were addressed, and several residents are here that you can ask whose concerns have been addressed.
So I guess in a roundabout way, the answer to my question is the applicant would not accept lowering the height of those 3 buildings, which are
if we could,
6, 7, and 8, and
correct,
raising the height of building 12 and 14, because they're different product, I guess.
They are a different product. They are townhomes. They are not apartments like that. So it would be hard. If we could pick up the density elsewhere, we could have done that. We tried that, and because it's a different product, they are truly townhomes, and you cannot just take the density and add it to the other side, because we do have still room for density, but it's because of the style and the design of the townhomes. It's not flexible to just chop off a floor and relocate it elsewhere.
Can I ask another question then?
Yes, sir.
Can you share the pain? In essence, rather than having 3-story buildings stacked right there, scatter those 3-story buildings along the whole perimeter of the property, so that you'd maybe have one on the cove, and maybe you keep building 6 as a 3-story, you make building 9 a 3-story, and you make building 15 a 3-story.
At this,
Let me let the developer respond to that since he's more intimately involved with the design of the project.
Sure.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, my name is Scott Applewhite with Legacy Partners from Dallas, and we have had this site plan to the city since August 17th, and this site plan has already gone through about 15 different revisions because of the restrictions that the current zoning that implied on the site, with the 60% impervious cover with the building setbacks already. We have a total of 21 residential buildings. We have a total of 22 different product types. The townhome buildings on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side are different product types from the buildings that are in the middle. And in order to get the 3-story, because of this compatibility setback requirements we already have, we're unable to move it towards the front or towards the back to keep our existing unit count and the building configuration, and also to keep our schedule. We're trying to start construction in January 2008. And I've worked with Mr. Slater, and we have looked at this one more time, but there's no other option for us to do, because again, these are not, you can't just take certain units out of the middle of these buildings and put it into another building, because it's townhomes versus apartment buildings. And there are actually only 4 townhome units that are 3-story on each side of these 3 buildings. So a total of 12 units. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit townhome where the parking is on the first level, the kitchen and the living area are on the second level, and the bedroom is on the 3rd level. There are no balconies on the 3rd floor. All the balconies are on the 2nd floor, and they're very small balconies. What we have worked with the neighborhood on, and we actually put that in our agreement with them last night, was to provide additional trees to be planted along the perimeter in the 25-foot vegetative buffer. We are actually also saving the existing trees along that area, but we are going to provide some additional screening for this side so that the residents that live in Avery Island would have the proper screening and additional screening for those 3-story sections of those buildings.
Pardon me, any other questions? I have a question of staff, please. As you know, we have quite a number of comments in our packet in opposition. Is there a valid petition?
We did not calculate it as a valid petition because they were working on it. They were working on providing a petition according to the city's petition format. However, the person that was working on that is Cliff Edwards, who I did email him back and forth today and said that he had come to an agreement with the developer and Ms. Glasgow, and he was in favor of the items that we had read into the record earlier tonight. So he was the one who was working on canvassing the neighborhood to do a petition.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
Was this the case that it was about, since it's a mixed-use project, and instead now it's kind of being rolled back to a multifamily? So when the, the commercial design standards get peeled away from this, will this project be able to go through without having to go through this process?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Have we heard from all of the people in favor and all of those opposed, or is that?
We had a.
Because we have pretty much one portion. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Because it sounds like that's what it's turning into.
Okay, at this time, I will hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative.
Madam Chair, to respond to questions, as they might arise, think we have several people here that are in support of the project. Cliff is the gentleman that was coordinating the efforts, and he wrote an email today saying he's supportive of the project with the conditions that have been agreed to.
Okay, thank you. Anyone to speak in favor beyond the conditions that we have? Yes, sir, come forward.
My name is James Hamilton. I mainly had a question about the neighborhood committee that was part of the agreement that was read into record. And I think that just part of the Avery Island portion of the residents in particular didn't feel well represented by the previous discussions. And I think more important going forward that the landscaping decisions, especially with the cover provided to the Avery Island residents, we would like to ensure that we do have some input on that, not that they're dealing with people that are bordered. I mean, if they form a committee out of people that are bordered by two-story apartment buildings they can barely see the roof of, I just don't think the same solution applies. And I think that some of the additional elements that they added about the landscaping provided to Avery Island residents was added after our meeting, after we raised concerns yesterday afternoon before they had to leave for their flight. But we would just like to be included in this neighborhood committee going forward rather than, or at least receive assurances that we're included in this going forward, with the, particular with the vegetative cover.
Any questions?
It's a reasonable request.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else to speak? For or against? Ms. Glasgow, do you have any comments to make at this time? Oh, we got some more people coming, I'm sorry.
I'm Karen Cleveland, and I just wanted to publicly thank and commend Legacy Partners for being willing to meet with us, and they were very easy to work with and very polite. And I just wanted to publicly thank them.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Aaron Reinhardt, and I was on the committee of the folks in the neighborhood that did meet with the Clearwater Legacy Partners representatives. This item number 4 in the amendments that were read into the record this evening were part of the discussion that happened after the meeting last night. It was added. It was also partially discussed during the other 4 meetings that we did have with Legacy Partners. This was something that they were aware of. This is something that they were working to make sure was looked after. I think that sentence 3 in item number 4, additional landscaping will be provided to address the Avery Island residents next to the 3-story townhomes and Covington Trail residents located where the 7-foot privacy fence and the 12-foot trees along the property line do not provide enough screening due to drops in grades and required retaining wall, should very firmly and very clearly address the issues of the residents on Avery Island and the other places where a grade would cause a problem. As far as sightlines, I would say that Legacy Partners has been very reasonable in what they have done, and if any past performance is an indicator of what they will do in the future, I would be very pleased to have them as a neighbor, contingent upon them continuing to be open to the requests and whatnot of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, may I have a motion to reopen the public hearing that we closed on this at our last meeting?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're legitimate. Anyone else to speak?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Just got it reopened.
Held for a second.
You want to give Ms. Glasgow an opportunity to
Yes.
respond
Sure.
if there's anything she has to
She
add?
was standing there just so nicely, I figured we'd just move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. I would just like to say that the density on this development is 17 units per acre on 17 acres, 288 units. We will be providing a very dense vegetative buffer within the 25-foot setback, and we will do everything that we can to work with the Avery Ranch homeowners to ensure that the trees that are planted there are those that will provide maturity, that will be able to provide enough screening from that end of the property. And Legacy Partners owns the rest of Riata. They're going to make sure that these residents continue to be good neighbors, and we will work towards ensuring that that happens. Again, we're here because of a technical error in the commercial design standards that exempts residentially zoned, but not if it's mixed use zoning with a conditional overlay that allows residential use. So given that, we will agree to continue to work with the residents. We will include everybody in the committee since they do not have an organized neighborhood association. We continue to work with the individual homeowners as we proceed through this process. Thank you very much.
Ms. Glesko, this isn't your question, but I mean, I'm not going to require that you answer it, but I'd like to know how there are townhouses on Avery Island when it's zoned SF2.
No, those townhouses are the adjacent property.
This says SF2, and it follows it around. See?
Those are single-family
No, the
homes.
townhouses are in their development that she was talking about. These three buildings are townhouses.
They're already there.
No.
Is that what you're telling me?
No, as
They're
part
proposed.
of their project, they will be constructing 3 buildings worth of townhouses
Okay.
in their project.
Okay, I was reading it wrong.
Question.
Now may we entertain a motion to
Question.
close the public
Question.
hearing?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
question. Ms. Glasgow.
Yes, sir. Mr.
So in the spirit of cooperation, it sounds like you might need a little more time here to work with your Avery Island neighbors.
We've agreed, we agreed to move forward with the city council, postponed our case last week to January 10th of '08, and we'll continue to work. I mean, the work will continue because our site plan is still in-house, so the site plan has to be approved, and all elements that have to address the landscaping and buffering need to be reflected on the site plan to be approved. So the zoning condition needs to be addressed so we can get that also addressed.
Right, but you haven't addressed all their concerns as of this evening.
There's 3 stories.
Am I correct?
Just one resident, I think Mr. Slater. We'll continue to work with them all the way to the city council hearing, between now and council.
Okay, well, I thought I heard more than one resident speaking against.
I think there were 2.
If I may jump in, excuse me, Scott Applewhite again.
Okay.
Of all the
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you answer his question since we've gone back that direction rather than add something, please?
Sure. We have addressed over 10 items that we have actually resolved and we have agreed to do that we didn't necessarily have to do with the current zoning, but we're doing it to appease the neighborhood. The one concern regarding the 3-story section of that building complies with the current setback requirements. That is a restriction and a compatibility setback from the City of Austin. If the City of Austin had a different classification and a different requirement, then we would adhere to that. But we're doing everything we can we've done everything we could possibly do to appease the neighborhoods, but that is the only one item that we were unable to do, but it still meets the city code compatibility setback requirements.
No, I'm not criticizing you. I think your outreach has been very good, and I am very, very proud that the neighborhood has been able to kind of come together and work with you. But it still sounds like you've got more than one person that's concerned about having the potential of a 40-foot or taller 3-story building kind of looking down in their backyard. And all the buffering is great, but it may take 5 or 10 years for those trees to mature out. And otherwise, this looks like a good development, and a townhouse development out there is, I think, fabulous. So
I
I
guess
urge you, please continue the dialogue with the folks on Avery Island.
Madam Chair,
And we
we make
would-
a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve MF4CO with the conditions that were read into the record by staff.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Our next item is,
Number 11.
item 11, is that correct?
Yes, that is the next item.
Thank you.
However, in the last 10 minutes, I received a postponement request on number 14, the restrictive covenant termination at the request of the applicant. He has requested to meet with myself and neighborhood representatives to further explain this case. And it is a difficult case with many different tracks and conditions. And he would like a postponement until the 8th of January, with a meeting to occur with the staff and neighborhood during that time.
Commissioners, could I first have a motion to take, was item 24 a discussion item, or was it a consent?
Item 14.
Item 14.
14.
It was a discussion item.
14 was a discussion item.
Could we have a motion, please, to postpone or continue this case to January the 8th?
I move to postpone this case, case C1486301, to January the 8th.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I think it's very easy, Commissioner, down there on the end, to vote for all these postponements.
It is nice the way she's supporting those.
I know.
Thank you for your support.
Now, to
Will you be back for them?
To explain that a little bit, this is Commissioner Hale's last meeting, so. We're going
Matter
to
of fact, I think she wanted to postpone the whole agenda.
No, there's a case I'm ready to hear. I'm ready.
Item 11.
So this is item number 11 now. C14 2007-0226 Stoneleigh zoning. This area, this rezoning consists of 4 platted lots. It is an undeveloped tract. It accesses Stoneleigh Place. It's presently zoned SF2. It's situated in between a park to the north and single-family residences to the south. The applicant is requesting SF3 in order to accommodate 4 duplex lots, and I have provided a map of the subdivision after the aerial, so it's in about 6 pages. There would be common driveways for to service the lots. The western portion of this site would be a drainage easement. And the staff is supporting SF3 zoning. We believe it's compatible with the existing residential types in this neighborhood. And there is adequate access provided. And there were a couple people signed up as well. I did receive a correspondence today from one individual, and I placed that on the dais.
These are all flag lots, right?
Yes.
Help me count 4, because you said the western portion.
There are 4, and on the plat map you can see them.
B3.
And there's one. The lots are closest to.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at one that didn't show the 4 lots.
Okay. Lots are closest to the eastern portion of the site.
Okay. Any other questions?
Lot 4, just to be clear, Lot 4 is essentially the balance of the tract, right? I mean, it's...
Lot 4 is 2.08 acres and includes a drainage easement.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Question, Wendy, on these flag lots, what is the width of the pole, the easement back to the lot for each one of the lots? Or what does code require?
The code requires, I believe it's 15 feet, although I'll ask the applicant to confirm that, and they have provided 25, it looks like 25 feet to serve 2 lots, and the remainder, this total frontage on Stoneleigh is about 68 feet. So it looks like there's 25 and then the balance. So they are meeting the requirements.
They meet the requirements, okay.
For the flag.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Anyone? Is the applicant or the applicant's representative here?
My name is Rick Thompson. I'm here on behalf of Carlson, Briggins, and Deering. And I don't know if there's too much I can add. They are 4 existing lots. They do meet code. They'll have just 1 driveway. They're actually all set up and ready to be built on right now. It's just the owner had a lot of feedback. Even though there's a park just to the north, generally speaking, it's on the fringe between SF2 and mobile home and SF4 to the north. So the owners had a lot of feedback that more appropriate zoning and more appropriate use would be SF3, which is more transitional, and then a duplex use. And I'll answer any questions, though, about the legality of the existing lots.
Okay, I wanted to ask you again. Did I hear you say that there's just going to be 1 driveway and it's going to be 20?
That's correct, just 1 driveway.
1 driveway to connect all 4 lots?
Yes, sir. 1 driveway down the 4 poles, right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commission members. My name is Vicki Black, and I live in the Silverstone subdivision, which is with 300 feet of this property. My home is very close by, and I'm speaking in opposition of this rezoning to allow duplexes to be built in the SF2 neighborhood. We just had a subdivision. I live in Silverstone subdivision, and we just had Meadow Lake subdivision just within this past year built there with homes for family. And within the past couple of years, KB Homes just built some new homes there in the Los Jardines subdivision. And looking at the map, it doesn't tell you, well, the map that was sent to us, that there was a park there directly in front of Langford Elementary School. And when Perez Elementary School was built, that's when Stoneleigh was open to allow for the Meadow Lake subdivision to be built. The area in which the request has been sought is actually a little piece of land, a little strip that I'm not sure how 4 duplexes can get on that land, but apparently they're making an application to do that. But if you look at your map, the map shows that it doesn't actually, the map that was sent to us, it doesn't show that that is a park there, that open space directly in front of Langford Elementary School. And behind the area that they're proposing is up against the backyard of family homes. So I'm in opposition of this because we're trying to develop our neighborhoods and we're trying to keep our neighborhoods safe, and with you know, it's just not in keeping in the spirit of the neighborhood, like the homes and the subdivisions. And if you see, there are some other areas with the misuse around in the area closer to William Canyon and some other areas, but the neighborhood itself is SF, and we would like to keep it that way.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Has has the Parks Department done any development at Kendra Page Park yet?
What do you mean by development?
Are there any playscapes or
Playscapes
anything
or-
like that?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's been there for years. We had our home built there in 1995, and that park was there.
Okay.
And it's not directly up against the mobile homes, as he mentioned
Yeah.
before. It isn't.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you say your name is?
Vicky Black.
Vicky Black. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Black, have you seen other fourplexes or duplexes nearby to where your home is in
No.
Quicksilver area? You have not?
No.
I think the closest ones are over on William Cannon or Stastny.
Yeah, I think so
Yes.
too. Terry Road area.
I'm sorry?
We were talking about the next closest might be William Cannon, Stastny, or Terry Road. Thank you. And
There
that's
are some,
quite a
like,
Here's some zoning.
I'm trying to think of the street, Blue Dawn, and
Yeah.
some others up
There's
towards,
Sunny
going
Lane.
towards William Canyon, yes. But they're mixed into the homes, too.
Any other questions?
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
In the neighborhood, as far as for rental, is the area primarily single-family home owned, like actually ownership, or is there any rental areas, like any streets that primarily rental?
No, sir. Those are single-family homes. As I said before, our subdivision, Silverstone subdivision, started in the early 90s. And then just within this past year, Meadow Lake subdivision was built. And within the past couple of years, the Los Jardines subdivision with KB Homes. And I'm sure these people, if they knew that there was a possibility of duplexes being built there in a shorter time, and some people haven't even moved in their homes yet for the new Christmas holiday season. So, I mean, I would think that they would really oppose this, and we haven't had much time in trying to try to say, have speakers to come.
Right. And just to clarify, if you look like, for instance, on the zoning map in your area, anything that you see an SF3 at, those are potential duplexes. Those could be torn down and duplexes can be built because duplexes are allowed in SF3. So any place you see an SF3, that's something that could happen. So, I mean, you look a block away, it's like, I guess, 2 blocks away, other side of the park, any of those could become duplexes.
Okay, the map that I'm looking at,
Yeah, duplexes.
I see SF2, 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 SF2.
Just on the other side of the Kendra Page Park, looks like in front of Langford Elementary, in front of Blue Meadow Drive, it's SF3. And then it seems like that whole area.
Those are homes right there.
Right, but under the zoning, the SF3, in this case here, they're looking to go from SF2 to an SF3. So they're looking for the same zoning as all those homes have. So those homes could potentially become duplexes as well, because duplexes are allowed under SF3 zoning.
Commissioner.
Okay, but I'm trying to tell you that there are like 2 or 3 homes there, and the rest of it is a park.
Okay, no, I just want to let you
Okay.
in the neighborhood what
Okay.
the potential could have.
Excuse me, Mr. Shea. Are we sure that those lots are 7,000 square feet to build duplexes on?
No, but the zoning does allow it, and what we're looking at now is, well, what I'm talking about is the zoning.
If the lot is large enough.
If the lot
Larger.
is large enough, that's correct.
But those.
That's right, some are duplexes. There are duplexes over there, up in,
Where?
looks like,
It's a real
Bitter tooth?
toss salad of zoning in that whole neighborhood.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
how
Bitter
that
Root.
happened.
Okay, no, I don't know what map you're looking at, but mine isn't, so I don't know. The one that was sent to me. I don't
Would you
know
like
what-
But even with that, Commissioner Shea,
yes.
it almost seems like there is a bit of a border there where they are all SF2 south of that park. So just taking that into consideration.
Right, well, I mean,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
All of that, and it would be a bit of spot zoning to change that in this area.
That would be a potential a line to delineate. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a question for the developer rep.
For whom?
The developer. Here comes, we were,
Yes.
Madam Chair, we're in the public hearing where we're in the for and against, and we just ask if, we probably ought to finish those that are against, and then we can go to questions of the applicant. Just to kind of maintain our process
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you,
I
parliamentarian.
think we had one more person up to speak.
Yes, sir. Did you wish to speak?
Yes. My name is Richard Black. I'm the husband of Vicky Black. And I said, we lived in the subdivision 1995. Well, that's just, what's Quicksilver subdivision. And at one time we had a association, but it's kind of slowly dissolved. All right, but that S3, what he's talking about, is behind the school. There's no other duplexes in the area where the homes are, and the new area bit over there, Las Cimas, was it? There's no duplexes over there. There's all the duplexes is back to the north of the school. So anything, that's a street that goes by there that serves as a buffer zone, and nothing that way south is no duplexes. And to put that duplex in there with homes is just going to be all out of skelter. We're talking about single-family homes that people will live properly. Well, you build a duplex in there, people don't move in it, they don't care about it, they move out, they destroy the neighborhood.
And that would be a good question for the applicant when we get to that, whether it's going to be individually for sale, for instance, condoized and actually sold as individual units, so it's actually a homeowner, or if it becomes rental. And that, that's a definitely very good question. Now, the other thing that I'd like you to consider is also that site is quite unique. It's kind of a whole flag in itself.
Right.
The duplexes look, if they are duplexes, well, let's just call these structures, because under SF3 it could be duplex, or couldn't, maybe it couldn't be duplex, because single family or duplex are allowed in that zoning. But if you look at the lot itself, all the structures are actually going to be, it looks like, it's not going to be the same type of fabric of, for instance, single-family homes aligning a street. It's actually going to be one, probably like a kind of a private drive coming in. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. Again, this is, be good for the applicant to describe the structure. It's kind of a unique lot, and that's why I'm kind of thinking about in some consideration of it, because it is not like a typical SF2 lot that's all the way around it. And that's all I'm asking you to consider in that sense. It's going to be different, and it could be different, and it could be okay, but.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Black. Anyone else wish to speak against this case? We'll go back to the applicant, let the applicant make a presentation or respond to the issues that have been raised.
I need some help responding to all the proper issues here. I know as far as you guys were asking about, and they were concerned about whether there would be all rental or some ownership. Yeah, the owner's not a builder. The advice he's getting from, in fact, I believe the subdivision to the north and a little bit to the east that you guys were talking about, I'm not sure the name of it, that I think they're one of them who were advising him that it'd be more appropriate zoning and use to be more transitional, to be SF3. But this owner's not going to build duplexes, so he didn't know what it would be.
Okay.
And you're right.
He's just seeking zoning.
Yes, sir.
He's not the end user.
Yes, sir.
Speculative zoning.
Commissioner Hammond, you had a question.
Well,
You said
that was kind of that was one of my questions, is
Okay.
Are duplexes going to be built there or not? And the other question I had was, would there be a possibility of doing some fencing or something, particularly along the border that kind of doesn't quite run parallel to Patsy Parkway, and maybe some fencing along Stonelay Place, if anything gets built over there?
I would assume that, and that'd be like in the form of a restrictive covenant or something. I would assume fencing would not be I'm assuming that would be fine, sure.
Is there any environmental features or floodplain that prohibits any development on this site?
No, ma'am. These are ready to go. The floodplains.
That my reason for asking this, if you extended your flag lots to extend on down and get 2 or 3 more, you would get the same number of units, single family.
This is the most, because of the flag situation, this was subdivided, I think, 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
But you can re-subdivide it. You could amend.
But the flags, you can only get 4 flags in that.
How long have your client owned this property?
Don't know, years.
What?
I think, 7 years.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioners, could I have a motion, please, to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to deny staff's recommendation to grant SF3 district zoning for case C14-2007-0226.
Is there a second?
I second.
Everyone understand the motion? Basically, the motion is to deny SF3. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition to that? Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we take a break?
Yes, sir. Do you want to, you want to eat now?
Huh?
You want to take about a 30-minute break?
I don't know that I want to do that, but I do want to take a break.
Yes, sir. We'll be back in about 15 minutes.
That's like, oh, we got 2 more.
I'm so happy down here making bubbles under the waves, holding your hand. I'm so glad you pulled me off dry land. Here I am.
He said he would, no, what's his name is, and I can't understand what he says. Oh, why can't you understand? Huh? We have a quorum back. We're going to call our next case, which is item 13, peer partners. Yes, sir, we need a staff presentation and I hope a brief one to address why this is not better as a PUD than conventional zoning.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Jorge Arrosalan with Neighborhood Planning and Zoning. You received as part of your backup under Attachment E a list of issues that the applicant had presented at your previous commission hearing via a PowerPoint slide. The commission instructed the staff to go back and take a look at these items and assess each particular item and report back to you. And so that has been supplied to you, and also there's a color copy at the dais for you that includes the staff responses to these questions. And the staff is available to answer any questions on any one of these specifics, but the staff still feels that the applicant has not demonstrated a superiority aspect on this particular application, and therefore the recommendation of staff currently stands as recommended. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
I think we had asked on the items where the applicant indicated it exceeded conventional zoning. If you will address those, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. We can start with item number 4. Under rainwater collection, 1,000 gallons used for re-irrigation. That item would exceed code requirements.
It exceeds? Okay.
That's correct. That item would exceed item number 4. Same with item number 6, tree mitigation at 100%. That item would exceed code requirements if the mitigation proposed by the applicant is achieved on an inch-for-inch basis. The staff feels that would exceed the code requirements. Item 7, permeable paving in vehicular parking areas of 11,000 square feet. That item would exceed code requirements if our environmental staff would have the opportunity to evaluate and review the proposal. Item 8, one-star green building. That item exceeds the code requirements, although staff would recommend a 2-star green building rating. Item number 9, integrated pest management. That item would also exceed code requirements. Item number 17, removal of existing outdoor concert venue. That also would exceed the code requirements. And that concludes the items that the staff was able to assess as exceeding the existing code requirements.
Were there any that you found were no better, or that conventional zoning would be better, or what?
There were several on the list that would be a benefit to the project, but not necessarily a demonstration of superiority for the overall PUD. And some of those are listed also on your list. I can point those out to you. That would be item number 15, removal of obstructions currently in the 100-year floodplain and critical water quality zone, which increases capacity for 100-year flows. And that, although the removal of those structures would be a benefit to the proposed project, the replacement structures cannot be built in 100-year floodplain. So that would be a benefit to the project, but not necessarily a demonstration of superiority. And also the same with item number 20 on page 4 of attachment E. Removal and revegetation of the abandoned portion of Pier Road. And the staff feels that although that would be a benefit to the project itself, it would not exceed the code requirements because the revegetation of the abandoned portion of the road would occur as part of the overall proposed reduction of impervious cover for the site. So that would really not be a demonstration of superiority in the staff's point of view. The remainder of the items, staff would need additional information and time to review and assess the proposals, and also there were some items that we were just not able to quantify as whether or not they were superior items.
Commissioners, any other questions? At this time, I'm going to offer the applicant or the applicant's representative 5 minutes for new information, and please be sure that it's new. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, for the record, I'm Dow Gillette on behalf of the peer partners. At the last meeting, you directed us to provide information to staff relating to our offer of mitigation. We have done that. Mr. Thrower provided Q1 and Q2 tables, plus we had a new environmental assessment done on the Ball Tract property, which is a property less than 1 mile from the subject track, the pier track. Our analysis shows that there's 46,000 square feet available on that track for transfer. By mitigation, that would reduce the effective impervious cover on the pier track to less than 20%. I submit to you that that alone creates superiority for this project and creates superiority for this PUD. When you go below 20%, Madam Chair and Commissioners, there's no requirement for water quality. We still intend to do water quality as set out previously, and we believe that creates superiority. A third level of superiority is we have offered to provide to the fire and police a reserve slip on the water for their use. I understand they have not decided whether they would take it or not, but that creates a public purpose for this project, that it enables this project to have a public benefit. We understand the city staff has not had time to fully analyze this. We think we've submitted everything that's necessary. We think the appropriate vehicle is a restrictive covenant. If this is not the right track, we'll find another track to provide for that mitigation. I would say if you were to approve this PUD, make it a condition that we provide mitigation to reduce the effective impervious cover to below 20%. Much has been said about access. Access is simply not an issue in this case. I just passed out to you a copy of the deed that Mr. Lamont got on when he bought the property adjacent to the pier that shows the exception where he took the property subject to the exception of a 6-foot easement. He bought that property knowing there was a 6-foot access easement to that property less than a month ago. We've done some research since our last hearing. Madam Chair and Commissioners, we have found a deed from 1922 that grants an express easement to the pier track all the way to Bee Cave Road. And I'm happy to provide that documentation to you. We have surveys done that show that. We have additional surveys that show that this 16-foot is really a 30-foot easement. The county even acknowledged this, and they paved the pier road several years ago. We have documentation we can provide to you on that if you would like to see that. Much has been also brought about Weston Road and the allegation that our intention is to take access down Weston Road. That couldn't be further than the case. Weston Road is available for emergency and fire access, and we would agree to a restrictive covenant as part of this PUD to restrict access from Weston Road only for fire, emergency, and police access. I think Mr. Ruslan did a good job describing what some of the PUD superiority elements are. You received an email from Ron Thrower today that clearly sets out our claim of superiority, and Ron's here to discuss that with you and answer any questions that you might have. You also asked us to look at the difference between 30 feet and 45 feet in height. We've done so. The plan we submitted to you showed a 41-foot high building, which would allow us to accommodate 180 boats. If you were to lose one floor of that stack and essentially take the boats down to about 144, we could get the height of this building down to the 37-foot range, still maintaining all the landscaping and the hiding that we're trying to do there. In addition, we provided to you at the last meeting some scenarios or some hypotheticals, if I may finish just briefly, some architectural articulations that we could provide. And Madam Chairman, we're certainly willing to, at your selection, pick one of those articulations and provide those articulations as part of a condition of the PUD. I realize my time's up. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gillette, you talked about the, I guess, the transfer track. Do you understand we can't make you give us a transfer tract. That has to be an offer by the applicant.
That is an offer by the applicant, Mr. Jackson.
Because you said we could stipulate that that be required. We can't do that.
To clarify, we make that offer of that mitigation track for the purposes of this PUD.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Commission?
I have a question. Let's see, I think one of the requests that was made, Mr. Gillette, was for someone to give us an answer related to the Pier 1 road. Did you find out who owns it? Is it a county road? Is it a city road? Is it a private road?
The Pier Road runs from the subject track all the way to River Hill Road. It goes through several different properties. So the underlying land is owned by multiple different owners. The Fowlers own the portion at the corner. We have that property under contract with the Fowlers and would close after obtaining the entitlements of that. And our intention is to widen that segment through the Fowler track to 25 feet and make numerous improvements to, I know several of you have been out there and you know that's kind of a hairpin turn back there. It's always been a hairpin turn since the 20s. To straighten that out and put some warning signals on there and make that a better intersection and widen that segment. We've also, on the portion that's owned by the Embarcadero track, have agreed to widen that segment. The middle section is the section that is owned by Mr. Lamont. We don't control that. He owns the underlying land. It's subject to our easement. It is an open question as to what that creature really is. We do know for sure it's an express easement. Whether or not it's become a public road, I would submit to you there's good evidence to that case. The county paved it. I can provide you a letter that showed where the county paved it several years ago. We think there's lots of evidence that show that that's a public thoroughfare and has been operated by the public since the 1920s when they went down to Charlie's Camp on a very similar use as we're proposing from this PUD. They had boats for rental down there. They had a fishing camp down there, and the public came down that road to that facility.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I'd like a quick clarification. You mentioned that there's actually a 30-foot possible easement, that an express easement in a 1922 deed. Can you explain that? Because
that doesn't show. That does not say it's a 30-foot. It just says there is a, and I can read the language to you. The grantees and their heirs and assigns should all times have the right of ingress and egress to said above described land, which is describing the pier tract, to the Bee Cave public road across the lands of the grantors herein and their heirs and assigns. What they were talking about, at one time, there was a 700-acre tract together. And this gets pretty complicated. I know if you'd like to see it, there's a map here that shows the properties and where this, it's not defined, it just shows that there is an easement. Then when a predecessor owner did a survey on the Lamont tract, we have a document that shows by a surveyor, a third-party surveyor, a 30-foot easement across the Lamont tract, which we call the Pier Road.
And when was that survey done, with showing the 30-foot easement across the Lamont tract?
Did we look at it, Shay?
Can you put that up on the overhead? You get a chance?
I've been advised that it's 1979 when that survey was done that showed the 30-foot easement. This is a survey done by Kelly. Who did that survey? Who did that survey? I offer that only to show that there's other third-party evidence that indicates that what now is described as a 16-foot may in fact be a 30-foot easement.
Right. And that, for me, what I'm trying to understand here and actually just kind of a little more insight into, because with a 30-foot, that changes quite a few things as far as for emergency access versus a 16-foot, and that's why I want to see some more clarification on it.
Right.
So, thanks.
Right.
Commissioners, any other questions? We will now go to the opposition or those in oppose. One speaker, 5 minutes. New information, please.
Madam Chair, Nicole Mead with Brown McCarroll, representing several property owners in opposition. We do have 3 people who'd like to speak, but respecting your instructions, we'll have 1, and there are 2 others here to answer questions. I am, every time this case gets heard, there's some information kind of thrown out there, and it's half of the information, and it's not entirely what is true. What Mr. Gillette failed to tell you was that it appears from all the evidence that's being gathered in the litigation over this access that that survey was done in error. There are surveys both before and after it that show a 16-foot easement. And the pavement on the road right now is between 15 and 16 feet. And so I submit to you that it appears that that survey was actually done in error, and in fact that the same surveyor has done another survey that says that the access is 16 feet. And that issue will, everything Mr. Gillette said about the access easement, in fact, are disputed points that are being dealt with in the litigation. And so he is showing you one survey but failing to show you the others. I wish I'd brought all of them with me so we could just go through them, but I really am surprised that he presented it the way that he did. Bottom line, this is introduction of intense commercial development in a residential area. This property, I want to remind you, would never have been zoned commercial had the Pier Restaurant not been there and the council not tried to accommodate the Pier Restaurant. There's a dispute. You got an email from me today, and I addressed this briefly, but there's a dispute as to whether the zoning ordinance that rezoned this to commercial was even correct, because the council minutes indicate that they intended for just the outline of the footprint of the Pier Restaurant as it existed to be commercial. And again, had the restaurant not been in operation, the property would very likely have been zoned LA. What they're asking today is to reintroduce, the use is abandoned. There is no pier there now. However, everybody, I think, just about concedes that a revival of the pier would be good. This is not that. They have told our neighborhood in meetings that the pier is not what drives this thing. It's the boat barn. And that is taking some LA zoning and upzoning it to a heavy intensity commercial, and taking what was supposed to be the pier and making it something very, very different. Regardless of how the access issue gets resolved, and that won't be resolved until the spring at earliest, I want to point out that what they're talking about is 2 potential access points. One through Weston Lane, which is a gated residential street, and one across Pier Road, which is a paved drive that goes across residential lots. Those are not appropriate access points for a commercial development of this nature. I think if this were not a PUD and they were asking for the zoning that they need, which is some sort of commercial, they probably wouldn't get it. I don't think this commission would readily grant a heavy, intense commercial use that only had access across single-family residential lots. Remember, they're going to have gasoline trucks bringing gas to and from. They're going to have water trucks, potentially, because we don't know how they're going to get water. They'll have to have boats trailered in and out, equipment, forklifts, all of these going either down a gated 100% single-family residential street or on a private drive, even if it's a public drive that is 16 feet wide and cuts across residential lots. I submit to you that even if it were 30 feet, it cuts across people's single-family residential lots. It was never intended for that purpose. If they feel confident that the issue can be resolved as to access, I say let's get it resolved and let's talk about this case once it's resolved. But now it's disputed, and as I said, I think even regardless of how it's resolved, it is an inappropriate use for the location they're talking about. We all say, okay, maybe there's a need for this. Maybe it's a good community benefit, but this is the wrong location for it. You can't just put any use anywhere. We know that. They, in their superiority list, I want to point out that staff did not point out that they included several items that are code requirements in their justification for why the PUD is superior, things that were required anyway. And then I also want to point out on the few items that staff were able to say exceed code requirements, not superior, but exceeds code requirements, I submit to you that all of those things could absolutely be done within conventional zoning. PUD is not what is making those things possible or superior. Thanks. Oh, and I apologize. The president of Rob Roy on the Lake Property Owner Association is here if you have questions, and the owner of that tract adjacent to the pier, Joe Lamont, is also here if you have questions.
Commissioners, the public hearing has been closed. We just extended this time to become current. We're ready for a motion if you have one, or questions if you have any.
I have a question for Nikhil. Sorry, can't remember the last name. Sorry. Mead. So simple, I guess. So if we see the map, the survey that was brought tonight, you say that is incorrect, but yet you have seen a correct one, but we haven't looked at it, or
we actually don't know which survey is correct. What I'm trying to make the commission understand is there are several surveys out there.
Mm-hmm.
Those are facts that are part of a litigation and are in dispute. We don't know what that access easement is, if it is an easement. We don't know if it's a private drive. We don't know if it's an easement. That's exactly what the litigation is about. But I also am suggesting to you that it really doesn't matter, because that cuts across single-family lots to access this proposed development.
Question.
But yes, I have seen that.
Question. Does it bisect the lots, or?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mead, I really didn't want to get into this, but you've opened the door. But when the litigation will resolve what it is.
Correct.
But the pier was a commercial operation that had commercial vehicles that for years accessed the pier. I mean, I went to lunch there a lot, and beer distributor trucks were there, and those were no small vehicles. And they, as far as I know, drove down the disputed access road. Is that a fair characterization of how that road was used for numerous years?
Because that's in litigation, Commissioner, I really don't have personal knowledge to be able to speak to that. However, I will say that there is a legal issue concerning overburdening an easement, even if an easement does exist, and a changed use. And again, we're not talking about reviving the pier. I think everybody could be happy with that. We're talking about a use that is something completely new and different.
I understand.
Ms. Mead, would the owners of the homes adjacent and the people that you represent in the neighborhood, do you think they would support a project which was, let's say, a superior pier project? For instance, let's say there's gas pumping that was there before. What the applicants have done is taken that and actually made it superior, a superior gas pumping facility. For instance, the restaurant right now, they've actually kind of taken it and moved it 100 feet back. I don't know if that's superior to what was already there. For instance, what if there was the restaurant that was still in the current location, so you can go say, get a burger or drink and sit there on the dock, but it was actually turned into a much nicer restaurant, something that the public can really come to. But in some ways, I mean, it's sitting where it's not supposed to, in the critical water quality zone. And they might, maybe one of the things is to expand it into a restaurant that's like a, I don't know, like a Chewy's or even Green Shores or County Line, but it's a much larger restaurant. There's going to be more people over there, but it's going to be kind of a great hub where people can pull up in their boat, or when they're cruising around the convertibles, they can come down and go over there and enjoy, I don't know, lunch on the dock, right on the water, just like the pier, just like what it always was, but much nicer, and taking a lot of the environmental features that they've also already talked about to make, for instance, Superior with, for instance, water conservation, tree mitigation, things like that, and maybe considerably decrease the amount of boat storage. Would they support that? In other words, kind of offset it. I mean, because you mentioned it seems like it's more about the boat barn than actually the restaurant. And the restaurant, to me, it's more about the public, for us to be able to come there and enjoy it.
I agree.
Otherwise, a boat barn is 180 people who could, who actually got to even get a space that gets to enjoy that, and the restaurant kind of got pushed off, and it's actually, 3,500 square foot. But what if we offset that and maybe decreased one and increased the other, but potentially even putting this into a critical water quality zone where it already sits, just like Hula Hut already sits. But those are really nice restaurants, and I think that might help the other side be able to attract more business and start concentrating on the restaurant and the amenities for the real public of every day coming in and out, rather than just the people on the boats. I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Commissioner Shea, the neighborhood, in the first meeting I actually attended as a representative of the neighborhood, presented that as a compromise offer. That the neighborhood, which started out dead set against even the restaurant, offering that it could support a restaurant, even a larger scale restaurant than what was the pier. We got into, so yes, absolutely, I think their support for a restaurant that would be better, nicer, would remove development out of the critical. Absolutely. We got into the discussion about whether a reduction in the number of boats was feasible, and we got nowhere with that. We were told pretty dead set by the developers' agents that the number of boats needed to be pretty fixed. Later on in the discussion, that basically the 180 boats is what was necessary to make up for the price they paid for the property. And later on in the discussions, like maybe around the last time of the last hearing, the issue came up again about whether a reduced number of boats would make sense. Because of the nature of the facility that we're talking about, which you see on the screen, if we could do that small scale, that is probably something that we could get happy with. But I can tell you that a reduction that I've heard them put on the table from 180 boats to 140 boats wouldn't make a difference to our group. They would still be absolutely against it because of the nature of it, the industrial nature of it, and the way that it looks. Now, if you were talking something small scale, like maybe 30 or 40 boats, with the restaurant really, as you said, sort of flip the two, the restaurant really being the focus with the boat barn being secondary, I can't speak for everybody in the neighborhood, because not everybody's here, but a lot of people are here. But that's something that potentially could be supported.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead and give your...
Sorry about that.
Commissioners, let's try to stay on the program here, but go ahead.
So I'm Joe Limon. I'm the one who owns the land next to the pier. And I can address this as just personally as opposed to everybody, which is some of the pier partners are actually the people who sold me my land on the lake. And when they first described what they were going to do with the pier, I was very excited, which was rebuild the pier and bring it back, take out the live music, and make it a great place for people to go. I was super excited about that, thought that was great. It was only later on when the boat barn became part of it that I flipped from this is a great idea to I want to block as much of this as possible. And the neighborhood very much feels the same way from the people I've talked to.
Thank you.
Commissioners, you have a motion or you have questions? I have a couple of questions of the applicant,
Okay.
or the applicant's representative. I had something placed up here, and I think little elves come up and place things on our chairs. Height limitation enacted by council, 1984. Is it 35 feet?
I didn't hear your question.
The height imposed by council in 1984 allegedly was 35 feet.
On the subject track?
Yes.
I'm not aware of that. Ron, do you know?
Well, let me ask you this.
Haven't seen that.
Can you live with 35 feet?
35 feet would not get where we need to be if we we're going to reduce the levels from 5 to 4. We need, as I understand the calculations, we need 37 feet.
Okay. Boat slips started out at 180. What's the number now?
Well, we're asking your approval for 180. That's still our, but what I was providing information to you was that if you reduce the level by 1, there are 36 boats per level, and that gets you to 144.
Mr. Rustovan. After the staff went through the comments about the PUD being better than, pardon me, conventional zoning, assuming with the status quo that after your review, how many variances would be needed?
8 environmental variances. There are 8 environmental variances and a total of how many modifications? There are a total of 15 modifications from the city code. 10 of those are environmental.
Thank you. Do you have a question? I'd like to know if someone would like to confess putting this up here. I just want to ask a question because I can't find the 35 feet. Did you?
No, that's what my question was.
Ma'am.
Zone C2.
I can say that in 1984, I have a copy of the zoning ordinance from 1984.
We do too.
And the property was zoned C2, first height and area, which I believe was 35. First height and area, I believe that was 35 feet.
Thank you.
But it wasn't restricted to 35 feet. So if it was zone C2, whatever C2 was replaced by, those restrictions would...
Well, correct. C2 was replaced by CS1, which has a 60-foot height limitation.
Thank you.
So it was not restricted to 35 feet. It
I
was
believe
zone C2, but there's not a C, as far as I can tell by looking at this document, there's not a restriction to limit that to 35 feet.
No, I believe when the conversion was done from C2, first height and area, it was converted to CS1, and CS1 currently has a 60-foot height limitation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioners, do we have a motion?
Well, I will make a try.
What a way to go out.
Because I have this strange feeling that there'll be a little bit of discussion on this. I take strongly into consideration what staff has put forward, and staff does not feel that this is a superior track. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion in compliance with staff's recommendation, or I should say alternate recommendation of CRCO with the requirements that they've listed.
Was there a second?
I'll
Another
second
motion?
for discussion purposes.
We got to get the discussion out
You
there.
seconded it? Okay. Everyone understand the motion? The motion is to deny the PUD request and go with staff recommendation CRCO. Is that correct?
Commissioner Jackson.
Anybody want to discuss the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
I thought we were going to actually discuss.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
Definitely for
I'm
discussion.
trying to get there, you know,
Okay.
I'm just, you
Can,
kind of thrown here a little
Okay.
bit. I didn't see that one coming. Of all the things we've talked about, I
I know.
didn't see that.
Everyone understand the motion? It's on the table.
Can we-
Staff recommendation, CRCO. All in favor of the motion? You want to discuss the motion?
If you want to discuss the motion.
Sure, I mean.
Can,
Yeah.
can we discuss what can be, kind of go through what, what this really means to the project with that, and just kind of run through it all? Because, I mean, we kind of went on one way with the PUD, and now we're jumping back to this, so let's kind of, I don't know.
Well, part of the concern has been, we have gone back and forth, and a lot of the discussion is to determine whether or not it is superior. And what's come back is it's not. That's what we've gotten back from city staff, that it is not superior. When we went through several of these items in terms of, yes, some do exceed code, but does it actually meet the requirements of being superior? That's where we still have not got a definitive answer of it being superior. City staff says they felt it's not.
Well, I think one of the superiority areas that they just, maybe for lack of information, punted on, for lack of a better way to phrase it. And it could be for lack of information, lack of understanding, and there's been a lot of new information that rolls out, as Ms. Mead said, every time this case is discussed. But the applicant's offer to limit impervious cover to 20% through a transfer track.
The transfer track is exactly what I brought up 2 weeks ago as the issue that we needed to determine whether or not we met superiority and was that being taken into consideration. At that time, city staff did not have the information. They said it would take them 2 weeks to determine whether or not it was or was not superior. And specifically, when I brought it up, it was about the transfer track.
But staff didn't answer the question.
I keep seeing it as, I mean, this is specifically the item, and it still has not been determined.
Let's ask staff. Assuming that it does everything it's supposed to do and adds, does it
Well,
change the
let's
impervious?
rephrase it.
Okay, you phrase it.
Assuming that a transfer tract can be found, let's not talk about the specific one that's on the table, because that may have issues that I'm unaware of, so let's not get too bogged down in that. But assuming a transfer tract that can be found that's acceptable, would that enhance this application?
I believe I'll have Ms. Betty Lampright from the environmental section answer the question.
Can I add some language to it? Enhance is one thing, but would it make it superior is the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Betty Lambright, environmental reviewer. One of the things that staff discussed internally last Friday when we were reviewing the information on the tract is the question,
Now let's not talk about this tract. Let's talk about if they find a tract that is an acceptable transfer tract. Because I understand there's issues with this tract.
we have issues with the tract. To answer your question, we feel that to get to the point of superiority, there would need to be more than a one-to-one transfer.
Could you define that a little bit better, Betty?
Well, the information that we have on this tract looks like it's about equal, although there is another environmental exception because of this transfer. What we would like to see is something where the tract is environmentally sensitive, and that we would be happy to have that locked away from development, and that it would be more than a one-to-one transfer back and forth.
So
when
possibly
you
a
talk
tract
more than
that
a
has...
one-to-one, you're saying you'd like for every 1 foot of impervious cover that it's offset, there's 2 feet of transfer land or something.
Is it
what
that,
you're-
is it a square footage thing, or is it that that particular type of land possibly has an endangered species on it or something like that that makes it unique? Is that it, or is it the square
It could be a
footage?
combination of both. We would prefer to have more land than an equal amount like Mr. Jackson is
Now,
talking about.
what they've offered up, in your understanding, is a 1-for-1, 1 square foot of transfer land for 1 square foot of impervious cover
Correct.
on the PUD. Okay.
Is that a criterion for all cases such as this?
That's a general concept for PUDs in general, that it's not just a one-to-one, that it's exceeds.
Is it 1 to 1.1? Is it 1 to 2?
There is not a specific number.
Well, what's the usual number when you have transfer?
I would have to go back and check. We were talking about the Forum PUD, where that was a great example, where there were hundreds of acres set aside, and it was the most sensitive tract of land in the city of Austin, blowing holes sink. So there's no comparison here, that it's not environmentally sensitive land. Their environmental assessment, which I was appreciated that they went and got it done, but the environmental assessment found no critical environmental features on the site. So it's a one-to-one transfer. There's no sensitivity to the site.
Any other comments or questions? Any more discussion?
Well, that does change a few things, because basically what we're saying is it's not that the land that was put in place didn't meet requirements because we didn't want to utilize that land. It was, I think it was a little bit more of the definition of it, and if there were some other piece of land, it possibly would have met the superiority criteria.
Any other comments? Y'all want to discuss it?
Yeah, we want to discuss it.
So until that piece of land is found, then superiority is debatable. Is that where we're
Correct.
at?
Open
So
question.
It's still an open question.
What if staff, if they found another tract of land and staff said, this does in fact make it superior to conventional zoning?
You know, my main concern is we could go on forever doing that.
Well, we could put the burden on them.
We could put the burden on them and make a motion contingent on that.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Would someone like to make a?
No, I'm just listening at this point. If y'all wanted to discuss it.
if we were going to put the burden on them, would we have to put together the performance standards, or was that something that staff would say, you know what, that's a good trade-off?
That would be an environmental, that would be a decision by the environmental board or environmental staff.
Because I think, you know, that could be a huge trim. And they can say, hey, I got 1,000 acres, I want to trade so I can do that. And we're like, yeah, that's superior. But then at the same time, they could find 1 acre that's incredibly sensitive. But, you know, each one is different.
And there are also certain requirements in terms of the distance away from the actual tract of land. So there may not be a lot of options unless we're talking about a 1.2 or a 2 to 1.
Right, and that's difficult to assess because each site has its own environmental criteria and features and, you know, sensitivity. So difficult to just say 1.2 or 1.5. Each one has its own virtues.
I'm just disappointed there's not standard criteria.
Right.
Whereby it could be measured.
I'd like to speak to I'd like to discuss my second.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of problems with this case. I still think there's still outstanding environmental concerns. If I was having to get my drinking water from a pump station that's adjacent to, you know, a potential gasoline spill, I'd be a little nervous. I'm unenthusiastic about a gigantic building, even though I'm not opposed to the dry dock area. I would have preferred a 30-foot height limitation, which in reality from slab to the peak of the roof is probably still going to be about 45 feet. The easement question, that's one for the judge. The mitigation was kind of thrown in at the last minute, and now it's an open question. I can see a need for a facility like this, and I can see a good public use for the restaurant as well, particularly, but I can also understand the neighborhood concerns. So I'm just looking for the right motion that will make me feel more comfortable about this case, because this is directly apart from one of the few areas that citizens in Austin can access Lake Austin. I can't think of a lot of public access to that incredible gem of a lake. And City Park is directly across from this development. And it was, an odd case to come forward with the PUD, requesting the PUD from the get-go. It just never has seemed to fit into the box that we normally think of as a PUD. I'm disappointed that the partners could not come to any kind of terms with the neighborhood. I think everybody's pretty dug in now on their side, so. I still haven't heard a motion yet that I'm absolutely comfortable with.
Madam Chair, let me try a substitute motion, because this one, I think we all count. And I don't know that anybody's strong one way or the other here on, I don't know that we've got 4 votes for anything right now, so, or 5, which is what we gotta have. Nobody's counting yet, but. But I'm kind of mentally doing some math here.
We're waiting for that motion.
I'm not sure whether there's anything there. I mean, the chairman of the task force down there made kind of a weak motion that she floated out here to start with.
Don't criticize her.
I got discussion. Somebody's got to get the discussion going.
I sense there was some steel behind that motion.
Yes, thank you.
I'm waiting.
I'd make a motion that we approve the PUD zoning with the, I don't know whether it's a CO or stipulations.
Following conditions.
Conditions. Let's see where to start. That Weston Road be used only for emergency access. That tree mitigation is on an inch-by-inch basis. That there is no waterside fueling, and what that would mean is no fueling of boats in the water or having fuel available to the water, either by hose or some other mechanism. It would mean they could fuel boats within their facility, but not in the water. The dock in Lake Austin would be restricted to 20 slips configured to the historical configuration of the pier. The maximum height of the building would be 40 feet. The maximum boats that could be stored would be 144. This is going to be kind of open-ended, but that the pier partners identify and gain approval from staff of a mitigation track that reduces their impervious cover to 20%, and that they that even though they're reducing their impervious cover to 20%, they they keep all the detention ponds and water quality ponds that have been proposed. And they are sized as they were originally sized for this submittal.
That maximum height being 40 feet, is that from the slab?
That's 40 feet as measured by the city, which is from the surrounding average height of the surrounding
The grade, the
exterior
slope.
grade. So if they want to have, in essence, a basement in the building, I don't really care. But what you'd see from the ground is 40 feet as measured by city code.
Commissioner Jackson, are you limiting the restaurant, or are you giving the same it was recommended by staff?
The restaurant would be as proposed by the applicant. Which I think they said was 3,500 square feet.
I'd like to also include, may I make a friendly amendment?
I don't have a second, so we're not into
Oh,
amendments.
okay, good.
Not sure this
The-
has gone anywhere.
The dock slip for the police and fire?
Sure.
What was the question?
The dock
They
slip
keep
for
the
police and fire.
slip for police and fire.
I have a question. You know, we've seen pictures. We have some in our packet.
Oh,
I would
yes,
like,
good point.
if we're going to do this, if this is going to happen, I would like to specify some west facade design, hopefully from one that's in the packet.
Really? Okay.
Then I would
I don't want to see a,
suggest,
a tin barn.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't remember which packet that was in now, but it's on page 26 of some document we've received at some point in time on this project.
With the drawings, you mean?
Was the color?
With the drawings?
It's a
PowerPoint.
drawing,
Yeah.
architectural rendering. There were 4 or 5 of them, and I've somehow managed to...
I don't have mine either.
You didn't have to bring them all.
I kept
Oh, you know,
looking.
some things you just keep everything they ever gave you, you know?
I kept looking for the design that would make it look like the Titanic.
The Titanic.
Yeah.
Maybe their staff has it.
I'm not sure what document this is, but I would be willing to make sure this exhibit gets somehow distributed staff so that it can be incorporated.
You want to pull that out, we'll pass it down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple, y'all can look at them, but,
Just select one of these, is what your motion says, to select one of these.
well, what I would propose is that one that I've opened it to. If we're,
I didn't
Both
think
there be
we, I didn't think we zoned
but you can,
aesthetics.
you can require architectural articulation that generally conforms to this. Yes, we don't normally do that.
But remember, we've seen some awfully ugly boat barns.
Anything else on the
You know,
motion?
ugly lasts forever, Madam Chair.
You must have a question, or must not like the motion. We still don't have a second,
Yes,
so
we
I'm
do.
not
Yes,
sure.
we do.
Oh, we do have a second? Okay.
I would just like to state that we'd be happy to forward any recommendation y'all make to the city council, but typically, I'm not aware of a legal means the city can tie a zoning case to a particular design for a building with regard to the drawing that you have behind you. Typically, the city does not enter into restricted covenants that require masonry or this type of thing. And in the old days, when we tied a site plan to a zoning case, it was possible, but my understanding is we cannot do that today. However, I will, if that's the commission's recommendation, investigate that with the law department prior to city council.
Mr. Rustover, if the applicant agreed,
The applicant agreed, that would be great, but I still do not know the
Thank you.
the legal means, the city would tie that proposal that you have on your screen to the zoning case. However, like I said, I will check with the law department to see if that's possible. I just know that typically we do not do those kind of things with zoning cases.
So that would be possibly a private covenant with the neighborhood that the applicant would go into? And we can't require him to do
I
that?
understand we can't require it, but if this motion passes, I would like to have, as part of the motion, that the applicant concurred with architectural renderings, blah, blah, blah. And whether it can be in a restrictive covenant, a private covenant, whatever, or it can't be. I still would like that to be a part of the record.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
would the maker of the motion consider a friendly motion to limit the maximum height to 30 feet?
Second that for discussion.
Well, no,
No, I'm asking
he's
for
asking
consideration.
to the motion.
I like everything else, Commissioner
But you live with
Jackson.
37.
SF2 allows 40 feet.
I know, Keith, there is no building on Lake Austin that is 40 feet tall.
And it's not really 40 feet when you add all the way down to the slab. It's more.
Commissioner Hammond?
You want to limit it to 30?
A quick clarification on that. So if you're going to reduce the height, because if we're talking about transfers, as we squish the building and we keep the same number of boats, then impervious cover goes up because they're keeping the same amount of boats. They're just kind of squishing it out. So do you want to still keep the number of boats the same and just let the impervious grow? Or are you trying to keep the scale of the overall building down in mass? 'Cause
Impervious wouldn't necessarily grow because we still said we want it to be 20% or less, so that would mean more land would need to be transferred
Right, but
in the
I guess
mitigation.
but currently my understanding is they are below that 20%. So they could bump up to 20 or maybe 19.9. If, let's say if they're at 18, well, they can take that 2% more by squishing the building.
Okay. I've never had a problem with the original number that they were proposing, which was, I think, a little bit over 180 boats. Every time I've talked to them, and I believe they'll back me up on this, that I've been fairly consistent in saying that I didn't care how they did it, but aesthetically as well as just to scale, particularly with large single-family houses all up and down the river, I still thought that 40 feet, because in reality it's going to be a 55 or maybe even a 60-foot building. I don't know, but I've never had a problem with the number of boats in there, and this condition about no waterside fueling, I love that. So I'd have to say yes, I agree with you. If there was some mechanism for dealing with the impervious cover limitation through mitigation, I'm all good with it. I'm not trying to limit the number of boats.
Can we split it at 35?
It's Christmas, sure.
Then I would accept an amendment to 35 feet.
Our question was, why don't you make it 37?
That's what they were asking for. They were asking for 37.
They were asking for 37.
Okay.
Would you accept 37?
Would you accept 37? I got you to 35. Would you go to 37? No.
What'd you say?
No, thank you.
Well, I would amend my motion to 37 feet.
You accept it?
I accept that.
Commissioners, I have a question and kind of get your thoughts about the restaurant. I mean, my concern right now is we are paying, quite a bit of attention to the boat barn, but my concern is really the public and the public being able to come and enjoy the facilities. And from what the pier was and what we all thought of it, held close, I mean, it was kind of an awesome landmark. And in many ways, I think it's diminishing now, that it's going away from a place for public to come and enjoy. Now it's very much about the boat and storage, and less so about the restaurant just being able to enjoy, for instance, let's say a drink or a burger right on the dock. And now the restaurant is actually, I guess it's 3,500 square feet. It's kind of smaller now, and I don't know how successful a restaurant that will be, because when the options are Connie Line, where I can sit on the water, practically next to the water, or Chewy's, or, Hula Hut, I guess Jake's, but that's closed now. Also, Green Shores, things like that. But now this restaurant has been pulled away from the water. I mean, I feel like we're losing something in doing that, and it becomes less of the original pier. I keep thinking about the superiority. I keep thinking that when this project came back to us as a pier, I kept thinking, great, we're going to do a superior pier, the good old pier, but it's going to be even better. But I don't feel that it's there. I think it's kind of turned into something else. And I keep thinking there's some middle ground that can be there where we do get that back, and the public can bring the pier back as an awesome landmark. But now I feel I don't think it's there.
So what are you proposing?
ERCO.
Said the small voice in the end.
Then I'll withdraw my motion. I mean, if what you're proposing is
I like the direction. I do feel that there is, from all the discussion from both sides, I do feel that there is a project here, and there is something there, but I don't know, I guess, we're trying to find that middle ground, but I still just want to hope that all of us don't lose sight of what we're trying to do is to have...
I'm still trying to understand what you would like us to do here.
It would be nice to have kind of the restaurant, let's say closer back to the water. I don't know, there might be an issue with environmental about having it inside the critical water quality zone.
It's against the rules.
But it's existing. So that could be something there where it's an existing, and that we could ask for a possible variance for that. But I don't know if this has opened up a whole can of worms, but at least it kind of starts bringing back the charm of what was once there.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to call the question.
Question's been called. Everyone understand the motion? Would you like to repeat it?
Yeah, I'd like to understand the motion.
No, we don't all understand the motion anymore. Can you
Okay,
repeat
the
it?
motion is to approve the PUD with the following conditions, and you are going to have to follow me here. Weston would be open only for emergency access. No fueling over the water, no fuel access to the water. Okay, I can't read it.
Pre-mitigation on 1-to-1 on an inch-by-inch basis.
Okay. Something is limited to,
the docks.
The dock of the existing facility, or the prior facility, or what's there now, will be limited to 20 slips. We have a 37-foot height, was that what we got?
Yes.
37-foot height, 144 slips. The mitigation track, let's see.
Mitigation track acceptable to staff.
Yeah, and...
to limit it to 20%.
And then...
They keep the detention and water quality ponds as proposed.
I have something on restaurant.
And?
As proposed by
And,
applicant.
And the police and fire boat slips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 144. Yeah, I thought I said that, okay.
And
Is that
the
pretty well
facade-
summarized, sir?
Facade design.
Oh, the facade design as applicant concurred with the commission's recommendation, but we're not sure that could be, as Mr. Rustover has pointed out, whether it can be a restrictive covenant or it cannot be a condition of the zoning. But I would like it in the record. Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could I clarify, so you are approving the motion is to approve the applicant's request as adjusted by Commissioner Jackson's motion, is that correct?
Subject to a suitable tract to accomplish.
Correct, but it includes the other, the
Yes.
15 modifications that are proposed to the code.
Yes.
And altered by the motion.
Yes.
And it would include a 2,000 trip cap as well, correct?
Yes. Any other
Can that be done? I'm really concerned. Can we attach to it that mitigation track being
Look.
suitable to what city staff wants? Can we do that?
I believe at this point, because it is a recommendation to council, we could do that. I can't tell you if we're going to reach the point where the staff is in concurrent about the mitigation tract. However, we will be presenting that information to council.
Well,
by the
could we
time
do
get there.
this? Could we say that there would not be third reading on the ordinance until mitigation tract approved by staff and environmental?
Well, we'll be presenting it at first reading for the council for their vote with your recommendation. And by that point, I think we will have a decision from the environmental staff as to whether or not they feel that the mitigation tract achieves the one-for-one mitigation down to 20%.
What you just said, there's no criterion for it. If this is customary, if it's minimum 2 other tracks like this, then I don't have a problem with it, but you're setting a condition here that we haven't set. We didn't say 1-to-1. Y'all said 1-to-1.
Okay, I believe what the motion was
I said
provided
acceptable, but I don't want to put those numbers out if they found something that was suitable, but perhaps did not meet those numbers.
Okay, so what you're saying is, provided the staff is in agreement that the mitigation tract would achieve an equivalent to a 20%
Yes.
impervious cover on the pier tract?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, did I say it right? Did we do it right?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
and acceptable by environmental staff.
Environmental staff and
City
environmental.
environmental staff.
Well, it's probably going to have to go to the environmental board, so, am I right? So it would be environmental staff and city
case-
staff and environmental board.
Right. The case has already been to the environmental board. It received a negative recommendation. They have not considered the mitigation tract because that information was just presented at y'all's last meeting.
Okay. Don't ask me to repeat the motion, but are there any questions about the motion?
I do have a question. Okay, so about what we just talked about the transfer of impervious cover and finding that track. So is a motion to find a track that is going to help this PUD be clearly superior?
Superior.
It has to be.
Because what we said is acceptable by city staff, but acceptable by city staff such that it makes this
It's the impervious coverage.
superior. Not just that it meets the 20%,
Right.
but such that it makes this superior.
Okay. I guess for me, that makes the motion kind of difficult because it's like, without knowing the tract, it's kind of a,
That's
Anyway,
why I said
It's
CRCO.
called suspension of disbelief.
Question was called, and we were explaining the motion. Y'all want to vote? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's raise hands. 1, 2, 3.
Then we'd go back to the main motion.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to deny the PUD, take staff recommendation, CRCO. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Let's take a
Wait
5-minute.
minute.
We're going to take about a 5-minute break. We're not going to talk about this case. But I've got, or else I just won't have to vote on this. He doesn't agree to the conditions. Right. This is part of it, isn't it?
No.
This is not part of Pier 1.
It's right next to
He ought to postpone it.
I brought
Things I brought, or maybe someone at the office.
Lonesome moan from Haggard Jones, but look at us now, what's gone wrong? Bleached hair and tight leather jeans, taking over the country scene. I'll never let 'em make that fool of me. I'm heading back to Texas, where I belong. People I love, trucks and tractors and farms. Texas, where I belong. People here like good songs. That's where I belong. I appreciate your time, but I've gotta get back to my own kind. Thanks for your offer, I'd be fine. Still you say you gotta make it here, but look at old Willie, he made it there back in Texas, where I belong. I love trucks and tractors and farms. Texas, where I belong. People here like good songs. Back in Texas, it's been too long. I'm heading back to Texas, where I belong. People here like good songs. 'cause the Lynchburg ferry runs a little too slow. And down on Main Street, they don't know how to go for a ride down Bollisville Road. You got to turn out the lights, turn on the radio. Hang on tight, baby, take you home. Green means stop, honey, red means go. We're going for a ride down Bollisville Road. We're going for a ride down Bollisville Road. We're gonna turn out the lights, turn on the radio. Hang on tight, baby, take you home. Green means stop, honey, red means go. We're going for a ride down Bollisville Road. Don't tell mama, mama wanna go, 'cause daddy used to take her on and daddy didn't know. Sneaking her out for the Saturday show and going for a ride down Bollisville Road. Tell her turn out the lights, turn on the radio. Hang on tight, baby, take you home.
To do what? Well, you have my sympathy. Okay, Commissioners. We need to have a revised substitute motion. Or we could have a new motion since everybody's failed.
Yeah, those are gone. We can just have.
Would you like to try something?
No.
Would you like to try something? Mr. Hammond, would you like to make a motion?
Well, he voted against both of them, so he's.
Yeah, you
sure did.
The chair can't make a motion.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your turn. You voted against both of them, so it's your turn.
It's either his or James. I mean, y'all voted against both of them.
Yes,
so
you did.
Y'all need to try to figure out one that you like.
But you have to have our votes, don't forget.
Believes 5 votes.
Okay, I'm going to read
Make a
this
motion.
motion and see if somebody will.
He's going
You
to
gonna
make a motion.
Sure.
Oh, boy, I bet I could get, but go ahead. Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the PUD zoning with the following conditions. Weston Drive is limited for emergency only. The same tree mitigation that Commissioner Jackson made. No waterside fueling, no dockside fueling. I don't want to see any gasoline on the lake. 20 slips, a maximum height of 30 feet.
What'd you say?
A maximum height of 30 feet. No limitation on the number of boats.
No limitation on slips.
No, I'm talking about the boats in the barn. If they can figure out a way to get 180 boats in, I've never had a problem with the number of boats. My problem is the fact that this is directly across from one of the most precious parks in Austin, City Park, where every Austinite can have access to this lake. And I can't think of a building on Lake Austin that's 40 feet high, or there might be some homes that are 35 feet down out there now. And then the mitigation tract will somehow be acquired before this goes to council to reduce the impervious cover. And I need a little help on this because I'm willing to give up a little bit more impervious cover than 20% proposed by Commissioner Jackson, but I don't know if we're bumping into a limit there. Do we do 25%?
I tell you, you'll lose my votes.
That's fine. I'm having fun.
You may be the only one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, about my experience at the Austin State Hospital today, and this has been fun all day.
Commissioner, if you'd like me to address the 20%.
I'd love that.
The current code requirement on the tract is for 20%. impervious cover limitation to the Lake Austin watershed. The applicant proposed with the PUD a modification to waive that requirement. What they are now proposing is to do a mitigation tract that they say would achieve the equivalent of having that be at 20%. So because it is a PUD, the applicant is proposing to modify that section of the code which limits it to 20%. So I would say that any amount of impervious cover is on the table at this time.
Thank you.
But if you want to keep us.
Then I would say mitigation at 25%. So as long as they're getting a proper sized mitigation tract, that the impervious cover on the pier site could go up to 25%. And then I would like to see the restaurant be moved, if possible, to roughly the same footprint, and that will probably require variances. But I'd like to see the restaurant close to the lake. That's all I got.
Can we have staff clarify some issues about the restaurant being in the existing location, whether it can be, is it legal non-conforming, and anything that comes up from that, from any renovations or expansions?
It's an existing non-conforming, and so the only thing it could do would be to build on its footprint. The other issue I would just like to point out, if you go to 25%, code says that you have to have water quality at 20%. So the issue of the water quality ponds no longer is an extra benefit because they would have to do that anyway.
Has there been a determination that this is a legal, non-conforming use? I thought the use had discontinued for more than 90 days.
Well, that was what we were discussing earlier. I don't have the actual, but if it is a legal if it's existing non-conforming, it would only be able to build within the footprint.
Thank you. Mr. Rustoven? Is it? Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Mr. Zappalak, sorry, didn't see you.
Madam Chair, I understand it was a legal conforming use before because it was zone CS1.
Because what?
It was zone CS1,
But the use has discontinued for more than 90 days.
but it was a legal use.
Okay,
So
it was
it's
legal.
not a non-conforming use.
Thank you. So you're limiting the size of the restaurant to the footprint, prior footprint?
Well, no, I don't think I want to necessarily do that, but I would like to see the restaurant sited, and I really don't know how to make the motion to do that. I'd like to see the restaurant sited on or near the existing footprint. It can be, I really don't have any problem with any size for the restaurant, as long as they can shoehorn everything in.
Is there a second to the motion?
I want to go back to the mitigation, because there's that big question about the mitigation. Is there any way that, because I know we're saying in compliance with what staff is requesting, is there any way that we can see it come back in front of us in some way so that we are actually approving what that final track is that they've gone through and what they've selected?
Also, perhaps another way to look at it or relook at it, could we make this action subject to the site plan coming to this commission?
You could make the marina a conditional use of the PUD, and that would require a trip back to this commission.
Okay.
I'm not sure we want it, but I was just a suggestion.
Well, that way.
Because Commissioner Hale's.
That way, that way we're making sure. That way we're making sure that it meets what we've said.
This is the gift that keeps on giving.
Easy for Commissioner Hale to say we want this
Absolutely.
I'm trying to give you more power, that's all.
Is there a second to that motion, or do we want to talk about it some more?
Second.
Thank you.
We do need to talk about that.
We're going to talk about it, I'm sure. In fact, I would have almost wagered on it. Yes, sir. You want to talk first?
You know, I think limiting impervious cover to 20% is a pretty critical issue.
It's pretty what, critical?
Pretty critical issue.
I agree with that, too.
I also think, although I know Commissioner Hammond doesn't care how many boats are down there, I do. Because I think that gets directly to the size of this building. And, you know, not only is it height, it's overall massing, and so I think limiting the boats is another way to get to the overall size. And so I will go back to, I think we should keep the boats to a minimum or to a maximum of 144.
That's acceptable.
And with what height limitation, we're staying with the 30 feet, with what Commissioner Hammond said?
My motion.
Do you have any other suggestions?
How about 37?
Why don't y'all go for 36?
How about a coin toss, Commissioner?
Please
I
don't
haven't
do
said
that.
anything about the height. I didn't
Okay.
hear you say you would accept the 20% impervious cover.
I'll accept that.
Will the seconder accept those two friendly amendments?
I will accept those two friendly amendments.
So all that's left is
One
the
was
height?
the height, and what was?
No, no,
No,
we
you
haven't,
said
we haven't decided
boats?
on the height.
The two friendly amendments I have proposed are 20%, the 20% impervious cover and the maximum of 144 boats.
That's acceptable.
So we're stuck on the height now? Was that, you were going to flip a coin, and I think we look foolish enough, so please don't do that.
Well, I haven't had a friendly amendment to change the height.
Right now, it's at 30 feet per the.
Right now, it's at 30 because there was
Yes.
no,
Commissioner Hammond, would you be okay with a friendly amendment as far as for height if we went up to the 37 feet but added side wall articulations to break up the scale of that?
Commissioner Shea, I just don't think there are too many architectural, and I'll call them tricks, which
It really
is,
could be a yes or no answer.
we're getting touchy. So I think the answer was no. Would you accept 35 feet?
Commissioner Jackson, Santa Claus is watching you.
No, he made up his
He
mind
is Santa
a long time ago.
Mr. Hammond,
Let me talk for just a second.
What would you
to
accept,
Commissioner-
35 feet?
I don't like 30.
you don't? Okay.
30
thank you.
feet. This is going to be carved into the bank. It's really uncertain how deep that is going to be. I think it's going to be 15 feet. That's
15
just
to
a
20
guess.
feet. Probably.
15 plus 30 is 45 feet. That's a big building. And
But you're not going to
with-
see 45 feet.
Okay, well,
I'm sorry. I won't interrupt anymore, I promise.
somebody, if they don't like my motion,
We sound like
yeah, I'm
we're
not
very
criticizing
close.
anybody else's motion.
You didn't accept the friendly amendment by Commissioner Shea?
I was going to say, Commissioner Shea, before my attention was diverted, that with no disrespect to architects, I just don't think an articulation on a metal building is going to help a lot. And once again, I'm just putting myself over at City Park and looking over there. Because, I mean, there are probably some houses on Lake Austin that are 35, 37 feet tall.
How about if we go ahead and add articulation? Because my concern now is as a building gets squashed in order to get 144 boats, the building just gets longer, and it just gets to be a bigger, longer building. But if we use some architectural tricks, you know.
As long as it's 30 feet high, well, you can articulate away. You're a very articulate man.
Madam Chair, can we call the question?
You call the question, and I'm going to ask him to repeat the motion because there was something about the detention ponds and included in a prior motion.
Well, it got changed because we went back down to the 20% in terms of the impervious cover.
No, it should keep, well, you're right. The original, one of the other motions did include that even though you were at 20% impervious cover, you would maintain the detention ponds and water quality as the applicant had submitted them. That probably would be worthwhile to have in here.
Okay.
That's acceptable.
Okay, the question's been called. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed? We still have 30 feet. All opposed to the motion, please say aye.
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 Just the way I roll, Commissioner.
If we could get it, may I make a friendly amendment to 35 feet? Because it sounds,
It'd have to be a whole new motion now.
a whole new motion, okay.
Whatever he said, plus.
I'd like to make a motion, absolutely everything that Commissioner Hammond said. However, the difference would be 35 feet, because I think that's our one last sticking point. But with 100, and everything else, the height, 35, limiting the boats to maximum 144, the impervious cover of 20%, the restaurant being at the same footprint, the mitigation issue of the marina being conditional use of the PUD, so yes, you do get to possibly hear that again, and the water quality being in line with what was originally proposed by the applicant. Is there anything else that was on there that we discussed?
Well, so in essence, the only change you're making is
The 35 feet.
the 35 feet.
I'll second that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Let's raise hands. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well,
Commissioner Robigo.
didn't you vote?
I just raised
She
my
did,
hand.
she did. You
Well-
didn't vote.
Didn't Mr. Hammond vote?
Let's
didn't
try
vote.
again. Raise your hand if you're in
I'll
favor of
just
this
leave down
motion.
here.
1, 2,
5 feet.
3, 4, 5. The motion passes.
Can I make a recommendation to the applicant to take a look at the restaurants being in the existing footprint, possible other variances that might be required to really examine the restaurant as a place for, the public? Thanks.
If I could get clarification real quick, by footprint, you meant at its existing location or at the size proposed by the applicant?
Location.
Location.
Location, okay. That would add additional modifications to the code that are not requested at this time, specifically to build a building in the critical water quality zone and the floodplain. I just want to clarify that your motion also included all of the modifications as proposed by the applicant, modified by your motion, and the 2000 trip limitation. Is that correct?
And
That's
pass
correct.
this on to council.
That is correct.
We're on number 18, is that correct?
Next one is 18.
Item 17.
17, okay.
Did we need to
Item
make a
number
motion?
17.
Did we need to make a motion about being past 10 o'clock?
Oh, I guess we do.
Go for it.
I move
I
that.
have a motion to extend our hour past 10 o'clock. Extend that
A
time.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. A presentation by staff for agenda item number 17.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Patricia Foran. I'm with Environmental Review of Watershed Protection and Development Review Department. I'm here to bring to you tonight a variance request by Whitestone Church. It's SP 2007-0461D. It's located at 4101 North Farm to Market Road 620. The applicant is requesting a variance to Land Development Code Section 25865A to omit the roadway deduction in calculation of allowable impervious cover. Staff did not recommend the variance based on the findings of fact. However, the Environmental Board unanimously recommended the variance on December 5th with conditions. And I can take any questions that you have at this time.
Commissioners, any questions? We'll hear from the applicant, please, or the applicant's representative.
My name's Richard Mahalka with Prosser and Associates. The Environmental Board, as you know, has approved the variance, and we would just like you to recognize that and approve that.
Staff, is this a legal tract?
This is a legal tract via a land status determination, yes.
So, and he's not subdividing?
Correct.
We usually get right-of-way at the time of subdivision. Okay. There was a note here also saying that this was not a privilege would be peculiar to him. Has this occurred in the past?
I apologize. Could you repeat that question?
It's my understanding that this is not an unusual situation. Have people been granted variances in the past?
When I did my research for this case, there were a couple of similar but different variances regarding impervious cover, which I did reference in the application packet that was the variance packet given to Environmental Board, and it should have been included in your packets as well, your backup.
Is there a condition by the Environmental Board, and I'm looking at it as I'm talking, where there will be no development on this tract for which he's getting the variance? If we have to go back and buy the property, it's obviously going to be more expensive if there are buildings on it. Was that a condition?
No, I can list the conditions that the Environmental Board placed with the recommendation if you'd like. It included an integrated pest management plan, revegetation at the site using the City of Austin 609S specification for seeding and planting, landscaping per the environmental criteria manual, which would not have been required since they are located in the ETJ, utilizing drip irrigation for the septic system, and vegetative filter strips and grassy swales.
Where is 620 on our map, on A17-9? This has a 620 address. Oh, there it is. It's on the other side. All right. Commissioners, any other questions?
Fronts it.
Anyone here in opposition to this? Yes. Let me see if there's anyone else in favor first. Anyone else in favor of this request? Yes, sir. Would you come forward? The opposition, please.
I'm Jerry Hoffrock. I represent 100% of the owners, single family in this area. I also have communication with the owners of multi-million-dollar homes directly across the street in the Lake Wind addition. The people who have attempted to come in are basically stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars of my value by putting trailers out there. And the closest one is no more than 100 feet from my front door. It's inexcusable, it's deceitful. They brought them in at midnight without any advance communication, without authorization. They violated every rule that Travis County has, and they're currently red tagged, among other things. I've had 5 appraisals done on my property, which is one of the state-of-the-art that mankind can build in the world for energy efficiency. It's impervious to every natural disaster that can happen. Now, I've tried to hide it when I'm not building that. They stripped all the trees off this land, killed all the animals in it. For long before I got there 24 years ago, this was considered unbuildable land, and it's still unbuildable. They're just trying to look for variations in order to get away with stealing value. We can either add value by protecting our environment, or we can destroy it by stealing other people's value. And that's exactly what's going on here. The organization would not pay any taxes. I've paid a lot of taxes over the years, and they would probably end up destroying my road, which I worked long and hard with the county commissioners to have resurfaced. It's been cut a number of times due to the local developer that sold them this land. And it's just, the conduct of the people involved have not been good. And I'm looking at litigation if it goes forward.
Commissioners, any questions? Staff, could I ask a question, please? The reason this does not meet ordinance requirements, is it because of the right-of-way?
He's asking for a variance.
He's asking for variance. But if we don't grant the variance, he doesn't have a subdivision.
Patricia Foran again with Watershed Protection. And it's a combination of factors that's causing the unusual situation at the site. I can show you an exhibit if it'll help clarify. So you can see the gray shaded portions here are areas of slopes. The applicant has a septic drain field. All of these factors affect their net site area. After those calculations are performed, then the roadways all need to be taken into consideration. And in this case, there are 3 roadways, 620, Double Dome Road, and then this little bit of Highland Drive. And it's those roadway deductions that essentially make the buildable area 0. So they're asking for the variance to eliminate the roadway deductions in their calculations.
Did I just hear you correctly? If they don't get that, if they do not get the roadway variance, they have 0 ability to build anything on this property?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, let's go back to the gentleman who spoke first. Mr. Halfrock, was that correct? Representing the agent or the applicant? Do you know how long the current owner has owned this property?
No, ma'am. Since August.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions? Would you like to address any of the remarks made by this gentleman?
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, if I may address the remarks, my name is David Bickham. I'm a local attorney here on behalf of the White Rock Church. A couple of points. First of all, despite what was said, the buildings that have been moved onto the property are not trailers. They are buildings that had actually been built on site somewhere else in the past. These buildings are going to be a part of the church building. They were relocated from Ingram, Texas, already built, and they had been built on site. They were never designed as mobile homes. They happen to have been moved from another location, but they're certainly not trailers. But the most important part that I want to emphasize from the legal perspective is, and Commissioner Jackson hit on the point, if you count all of the roadways that surround the property, which are not actually on the property, as part of the impervious cover, what would in effect be happening is the city would be saying that you can't build anything on the property, that the property can't be developed at all. And in the takings context of regulatory takings, if you get rid of the ability to build anything on the property, you have effectuated an inverse condemnation, and it would be a situation where the church would be seeking to have the property paid for by the city. That's not what they want. They don't want a lawsuit. They want a church. And they want the variance so that they can build essentially 9,000 square feet of church to be there, on the property. And they've already agreed to all the conditions that the environmental board put in place. That's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about building a permanent building, and the mobile structures, for want of better description, those would go away.
No, those are the permanent structures. They are what would ultimately be there. The plan is there are 3 buildings. They were going to put some elevated walkways in between the buildings. They are 3 buildings that are going to be oriented where one is a sanctuary and the other 2 basically are auxiliary spaces, classroom spaces, and other usable spaces. The 3 buildings, and you can't see it very clearly on what was on the screen, but the 3 buildings, if you look at the top, are sort of in a T shape. I'm not used to anybody needing a microphone to hear me.
You need to turn it on. It's so we can record it as much as anything.
And if you look at the buildings, there are 2 buildings that are perpendicular in this direction, perpendicular to one building that sits in this direction. The one in the bottom here would be a sanctuary. These others would be sort of auxiliary buildings with the walkway in between. And the total impervious cover planned is something in the order of 9,000 square feet. The buildable area that's calculated is 9,165 square feet, but if you take the roadway into effect, the roadway essentially moves that buildable area down to 0. And so that's the reason that the variance is sought.
Okay. So these are essentially like portable classrooms right now, right?
That's exactly what they are. They're built-in-place portable classrooms, as opposed to trailers that were more mobile. They were originally built on site in the location where they were.
This looks like a great location for a boat barn.
Only if it could be 32 feet.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Sir, would you allow me to ask if you would allow this resident from your area to show us where his property is on any of your maps that we could have on the big screen?
Sure, be glad to do it. As my understanding is it's sort of this spot right here.
He's right there. Let me see. Let's see what he has to say.
These are my lots, all 4 of these here that are not numbered.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a question for staff. When was this property originally platted?
It was a land status determination. If you can bear with me, I can look in my files. I apologize for the delay. I do have the information. The specific section that we're talking about right here, I have a land status determination that was filed on June 5th, 2007. I'm looking for an approval date, but that's the submittal date.
Was that when the plat was actually created?
That's when it was determined to be a legal lot. So it wasn't platted. The land status determination means that it doesn't need to go through the platting process.
We could probably widening of the roads, et cetera, or balance of the tract or whatever. I don't know what the issue would have been.
Staff, is there a structure on that property at this moment? There is, besides those two that were just delivered not long ago?
No, the only structures on the property are I believe the 3 mobile homes. I have a picture if you'd like to take a look at that to see what it looks like.
A picture, you said?
Correct, yes.
I would,
Mhm.
thank you.
Because we're hearing mobile homes and we're getting.
Staff? Excuse me, staff? Got it. What I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to find out when the lot was actually available to exchange hands as a real property from owner to owner to owner, and at that point also trying to find out when these regulations as far as for impervious cover from Hill Country roadways came into play.
Ownership was August of this year.
Yeah.
Current owner.
So before that, it was...
I don't know. That was the question that I asked, was when did this...
I don't have the history on this tract.
Okay.
I think perhaps
Maybe
it would be best to have the applicant answer that question.
Yeah.
Can the applicant clarify maybe some ownership history or as much history they can on it?
Oh, look, Betty.
That's a good.
No, there's not.
Commissioners, we do have some information in our file that there was a final subdivision plat approved in April 1946 on this property. However, we don't know exactly when it was put into its current configuration. The current legal description is a legal lot and a portion of another lot, so the original configuration may have changed since it was originally platted.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I was just hoping we could get some descriptions of the photographs, a little clarification on that second one, especially with cars.
What?
The one with cars.
Donna Galati with Watershed Protection Development Review. This is the picture you see here is the one from the case file showing the 3 buildings as they are.
Second one had nothing to do with anything? That wasn't an additional?
So.
Commissioners, is there anyone else to speak on this who has not spoken? Commissioners, this is a variance request. And it's in the ETJ. It's a legal subdivision. We need to look at the findings of fact relative to the variance and make a motion accordingly. First, let's close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Second. So moved.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion we accept the recommendation by the Environmental Board.
Second.
Which is to
Is to approve the variance.
variance request.
With conditions.
But the conditions would be the action of those placed on it by the Environmental Board. My
Any-
justification here is, if anybody cares, is that you know, I don't know how we can, the mere fact that this tract, it is unusual, it's surrounded by 3 roads, it's a small tract, and if the impervious cover of those roadways, which are not required by the development of this tract, but they're just how the tract got created, take up all the impervious cover, that's an unusual circumstance.
I don't disagree with you, but my problem is that this owner purchased this property less than 6 months ago.
But he may not have, he wouldn't have known what the impervious cover was.
He should have checked. I mean, this is a 3 or 4 month ownership. It's on a major highway. I'm sorry. And usually I would vote for a church to do anything or allow anything, but I can't support this because we can't even be certain that it's going to remain a church. It's in the county. Everyone understand the
We're
motion?
not zoning it, we're
I
just
know.
giving him permission to have 9,000 square feet of impervious cover.
I know. And to me, those calculations should have been run, and he should have looked into that before he bought it, or before they bought it. Anyway, I can't support the motion for those reasons. Everybody understand the motion? To approve as per the recommendations or the conditions set by the Environmental Board. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Your variances are denied. Where are we now?
Number 18.
Item number 18, Embarcadero.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Craig Carson, Environmental Reviewer for the City of Austin's Watershed Protection Development Review Department. Today I bring before you a variance request for a project called Embarcadero. It's a 51-unit condominium unit with private driveways, and associated wastewater system for the 51 units. It's located on 51.84 acres, of which 48.83 acres is in the 2-mile ETJ, and of which 3.01 acres is zoned LA. There are 5 CEF rimrocks considered CEFs on this site. ERM staff has granted administrative variances to those setbacks to a minimum or a minimum of 75 feet to the southernmost rimrock and 50 feet for the other 4 rimrocks. On November 14, 2007, this project was taken before the Environmental Board, and at that time, the project had over 20% impervious cover, which required construction of 4 water quality ponds and 1 large detention pond. All of those ponds were to be built on pretty steep slopes and had large cut fill variance needed to build those. Along with that, so they requested a variance for land development, or the Land Development Code 25.8, 341 and 342 to allow cut and fill greater than 4 feet. They also requested at that time variance from Land Development Code Section 25.8, 302B to allow construction on slopes greater than 25%. And additionally, variance to Land Development Code 25.8, 361E to reduce the wastewater treatment by land application requirement of 7,000 square feet per living unit equivalent to 5,000 square feet. During that EV board, most of the discussions were centered around the safety concerns regarding the construction of the 4 water quality ponds and the detention pond on the slopes. The EV board basically voted not to recommend the variance by a vote of 6 to 1 to 0. On November 27, 2007, the applicant came in and met with staff and discussed revisions to the plans. This included bringing the impervious cover level below 20%, which basically made the water quality ponds go away. So the cut and fill variance is no longer needed. In addition, the revision shows that if it is necessary that they do end up needing to build a detention pond, that pond will be built basically underneath a portion of one of the existing drives on the system, on the development, and will not be on the steep slope where it was located prior. Furthermore, the applicant further reduced the area of construction on slopes greater than 25%, and they reduced that down to a maximum or a minimum of 0.21 or 219 acres. Excuse me. The applicant then requested that we bring before the Zoning and Platting Commission, and that's why we're here this evening. And basically, due to the revisions, they're only asking for 2 variances. And again, the variance for the cut fill, 25.8, 341, and 342 is no longer needed. However, they still need to build this project a variance from Land Development Code sections 25.8, 302B to allow constructions on slopes greater than 25%. And also, they are still requesting the variance for Land Development Code 25.8, 361E to reduce the wastewater treatment by land application requirement of 7,000 square feet down to 5,000 square feet. Staff recommends both the remaining variances with the following conditions: that all disturbed areas within CEF setbacks and designated 40% natural area will be revegetated with City of Austin Specification 609S. That the other disturbed areas outside of the CEF setbacks and designated 40% natural area will be restored within the City of Austin 604S.6 specifications, which is just native seeding, except for the wastewater irrigation fields, which will be revegetated with Bermuda grass and/or what is called out in their wastewater permit. All irrigation areas will have at least 16 to 18 inches of topsoil, and if it's necessary to import topsoil to meet this requirement, the soil will be a City of Austin approved native soil. The applicant will take all measures necessary, including installation of additional erosion control devices, to ensure that any newly placed soils remain in place. They need a contingency plan for effluent storage. It'll be developed and approved by the City of Austin prior to the plan release. All trees greater than 19 inches, caliper inches, that are removed will require mitigation per the City of Austin tree ordinance and associated environmental criteria manual, and all trees used for mitigation will be a Class 1 native trees. Implementation of a city-approved integrated pest management plan, and furthermore, a restricted use of the common areas, which will be defined in a restrictive covenant. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Question would be, when this went before the Environmental Board, were those conditions a part of the consideration made by the Environmental Board?
Yes, all these conditions were there, including a couple of others that were related to the water quality ponds that have been taken out since there are no longer any water quality ponds proposed.
Okay. Commissioner, any questions? We'll hear from the applicant or the applicant's representative, please.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, I'm Dow Gillette on behalf of the applicant. I'm with Clark Thomas and Winters. We concur with the conditions imposed by staff and support the staff's recommendation that you grant these two variances. I have a very brief PowerPoint presentation that I've given you a hard copy of. If I could just page through that very briefly. I know the hour's late. The location of this property is above Lake Travis. It's, Lake Austin. The hour is late. And the topography of that site is there are some very steep parts of that property that make construction very difficult. And what we've tried to do here, and I think the staff very clearly set out what we're doing here, is changing from what was a project that had an excess of 20% to a project that's less than 20%, which takes away the need for any water quality. And I think the issues at the Environmental Board primarily dealt with the placement of the water quality ponds. And there are no longer going to be any water quality ponds, and there were concerns about access to those water quality ponds. And that took away the need for this cut and fill requirement. So you're left with building on slopes. And if you could just page through the, that's a layout of the site. Keep going. That shows you kind of the variable topography of the site. Next. 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 Those are the two variants that we're seeking. And as staff described, the building on slopes with a gradient more than 25%, we worked very hard with staff on that, and you'll see later on in there that we have moved the location of the 51 units around to severely limit the amount of slope building to a fraction of the percentage. It's like 3.4% of the site. The second variance relates to the amount necessary of the square footage for the drain field. What the applicant has done is put a computerized system on here that's been utilized in Central Texas. If you'll page through the rest of the PowerPoint, that's just a break that 45% of the net site area contains slopes with a gradient of more than 25%. That creates a very difficult and challenging project for us. And what we decided to use was the flat portion for our drain fields, and to minimize the slope to the very least. And as I stated earlier, that portion is very minuscule to 0.22 acres, which was originally at 1.6 acres, down to 0.22 acres of building on slopes. Next, please. What that shows is where the buildings were previously located. It's very difficult to show, but basically that's the topo over that, and it shows how we've moved in working with staff and our engineers to drastically reduce the amount of building on slope. Next, please. Those are the other units. Next. Next. Variance 2 is, as I described, the TCEQ regulations require 3,000 square feet. The standard system of City of Austin requirement is 7,000 square feet. What we're asking for is a variance down to 5,000 square feet available for the drain field. And that's commonly used with this type of system. Next, please. These are several, there are multiple projects all over this area. Next, please. That shows all these projects have used this type of system very effectively at a reduced drain field. Next. Next. That's just a depiction, if you would like to read that. It shows how a drip irrigation system works. It's much more efficient than any of the other systems available. Next, please. Further diagrams about that. And then the last thing is the Embarcadero/pier relationship. The 5 acres that the pier is utilizing are the cross-hatched area down at the bottom. That is only for the purpose of the pier for zoning purposes. That approximate 5 acres is picked up in our site plan, and all the impervious cover in that site plan is accounted for in our site plan, and it's still below 20%. So with that, both our engineers here are here to answer any technical questions about the design of the site plan, any technical questions about the requested variances. We ask for your support of the variances, and we accept the conditions.
Commissioners, any questions? Anyone here to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Quick, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
I have one question of staff, and may not be able to answer it. It's not a fair question, but why did the Environmental Board vote against it?
It's more my take on it, but when I was in listening to their discussions, that their main concern was the construction on slopes of the water quality ponds and the detention pond. The plan that was provided that I reviewed prior to that did not include some maintenance roads, which brought up some additional impervious cover questions, and so it just kind of threw, I think, just kind of spiraled on top of one another, and they voted them down. But it seemed to me that their major concern was safety and related to the water quality ponds and the detention ponds overall.
Commissioners, any questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the variances with all staff recommendations
Is there a
and
second?
conditions.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, with
Is there
all
a second?
staff conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are we through?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
We have folks sitting back here in the back, are they?
Who's back there in the back?
Oh, they,
Maybe they were lonely tonight.
maybe they were, just didn't have anything better to do tonight.
We're being audited.
Huh?